I'm the Midnight Storyteller, here to keep you company through the quiet hours. Many of you listen to these stories to fall asleep, and I'm honored to guide you there. And before we begin, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps keep the stories alive. Tell me in the comments, where are you listening from, and what time is it on your side of the night? Now, get comfortable, relax, and let's begin. The village wasn't on any map. The driver who brought them up the winding pine-lined road had laughed when they asked for the name. "No need for names," he said. "You'll see." When the van stopped in the town square, the air smelled of fresh bread and damp earth. Sunlight dripped golden through the trees, casting warm shadows over cobblestone streets. An inn stood at the heart of it all, the Welcome House, its name carved into an ancient wooden sign. The townspeople were waiting, a dozen of them, smiling too wide. Their clothes were timeless, neither modern nor outdated, their hands calloused but clean. They greeted the tourists by name before introductions were made. Holly, David, Elena, Mark, and Sam. 5 strangers who had booked the same off-the-grid travel package, promised authenticity. Their phones had lost signal miles back, but no one minded. This was what they wanted, escape. Inside the inn, the air was thick with lavender and something metallic. Their rooms were pristine, their luggage already placed beside neatly made beds. No one remembered bringing it up. "Dinner is at sunset," the innkeeper said. "Stay as long as you like." Something about the way she said it made Holly shiver. Dinner was exquisite, handmade bread, roasted meats, wine richer than anything Holly had tasted before. The innkeeper watched them eat, eyes gleaming. Every time a glass emptied, it was refilled before anyone could ask. By the time the sun dipped behind the mountains, their bellies were full, their minds foggy. Mark laughed too loudly. Elena yawned mid-sentence. Then Holly's phone buzzed. No service. Yet a message appeared on the black screen, stark and urgent. "Don't drink the water. Don't let them touch you." A chill gripped her spine. She turned the phone to Sam, but he only blinked at her, sluggish. No signal, remember? Her pulse quickened. She turned to Mark, but his seat was empty. His plate had been cleared, his chair pushed neatly beneath the table. "Where's Mark?" Holly asked. David frowned. "Who?" She laughed, uneasy. "Mark. He was sitting right there." The innkeeper's warm voice slid between them. "You must be tired, dear." A gentle hand rested on Holly's shoulder, too gentle, too firm. There was no Mark. She jerked away, heart pounding. The others just smiled, soft and vacant. Something was very wrong. Holly didn't sleep, not because the bed was uncomfortable. It was perfect, too perfect. Sheets that smelled like nothing. A room silent as a vacuum. She stared at her phone, hoping for another message, something, anything. But the screen remained blank, no signal. At dawn, she knocked on Sam's door. No answer. She knocked again. The innkeeper's voice drifted up from the lobby. "Your friend left early." "Left?" Holly's stomach twisted. He wouldn't just leave. The woman smiled. Too kind. Too patient. "You must be confused. There was no Sam." Holly backed away, bile rising in her throat. She ran outside. The village was just as picturesque as before, but something was wrong. The roads. Every street, every cobbled path led back to the town square. She ran past the bakery. The same smell of fresh bread. Past the small houses. The same woman sweeping her porch. Again, the same motion, the same smile. Panic clawed at her chest. She sprinted toward the edge of town, where the trees met the road, only to find herself back at the inn's doorstep. The innkeeper was waiting. Breakfast is ready, dear. Holly's breath hitched. She was trapped. Holly didn't eat, didn't drink. She paced the inn's hallways, pushing on doors, checking locks. Something was missing. The town had swallowed Sam, Mark, all of them. The others didn't even flinch. David hummed to himself. Elena brushed her hair in slow, perfect strokes. Holly had to find a way out. A locked door stood at the end of the hall, one she hadn't noticed before. The brass knob was cold under her fingers. She pushed. It creaked open. The room inside smelled of dust and something spoiled. Rows of wooden shelves lined the walls, packed with photographs. Hundreds of them. Old, yellowing snapshots of tourists. Holly's breath came in short gasps as she scanned the faces. Some she recognized. Sam, Mark, others from the van. But something was wrong. Their faces were changing. Subtle at first, cheeks fuller, eyes softening, brows smoothing. Then, unmistakable, the wide smiles, the vacant expressions. They weren't missing. They were becoming the villagers. A mirror stood in the corner, dusty but whole. Holly forced herself to look. Her face was already changing, the sharp angles of her jaw softening, her eyes dulling. No, 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 no. Footsteps creaked behind her. The innkeeper's voice, warm as honey. You're almost ready, dear. Holly stumbled backward, her pulse thundering. No, she whispered, but her voice sounded different, softer. Her reflection blinked at her, not quite her anymore. Behind her, the innkeeper smiled, patient, kind. It's easier if you don't fight it. Holly clenched her fists. But she couldn't remember what she was fighting, couldn't remember what she had been running from. Outside, the town square was waiting. The villagers opened their arms, smiling, welcoming. And Holly smiled back. She was home now. She had always been home. The end. Ian Cole's name was in the newspaper. The obituary was small, wedged between a Florissad and a charity fundraiser notice. Dr. Ian Cole passed away last Tuesday. Respected scientist, loving husband, private service held. He stared at the words, his hands going cold. A mistake. Someone else with my name. But as his eyes traced the lines again, a slow dread coiled in his chest. His phone buzzed. A message from David Lynn. Ian, I don't know how to say this. We all saw you at the funeral. What's happening? Ian felt his pulse stutter. He had lunch with David yesterday. They had sat at Bishop's Diner discussing a grant proposal. He was alive. He was here. His reflection in the kitchen window didn't blink when he did. By the next morning, a different newspaper had a new obituary. This time, it claimed he had died in a car crash. Ian sat at his kitchen table, hands gripping the ceramic mug of coffee that had long since gone cold. He read the obituary twice, then 3 times. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling shakily. The details had changed, but the date was the same. Last Tuesday. His phone rang. David again. Ian. His voice was uneven, like he was speaking through gritted teeth. Why do you sound like that? Like what? Ian whispered. Like we buried you. Ian shut his eyes. David, we had lunch yesterday. A pause. Then very softly. No, Ian, that was 2 weeks ago. Ian's stomach dropped. You're not real. Click. Deadline. By the time Ian reached the research facility, his security pass no longer worked. The scanner flashed red. Access denied. A guard approached the glass doors, peering at him with wary confusion. I'm Dr. Ian Cole, Ian said carefully. I work here. Neural simulation project. The guard's expression flickered between concern and something darker. Sir, his voice dropped. You're mistaken. That project doesn't exist. Ian's lips parted. sharp and wrong bubbled in his throat. That's ridiculous. I've been here for years. Check my office. The guard took a step back. Sir, he said slowly, we attended your funeral. The world lurched beneath Ian's feet. A sharp ringing sound filled his ears. Something was wrong with the air. The parking lot behind him looked different. Wider, flatter. The sky was a shade too gray. Ian blinked, and the guard was gone. Just gone. The building was still there, the doors locked, but now there was no one inside. No lights, no movement, no sign it had ever been operational. That night Ian searched for proof that he was real. But the photos in his albums had changed. His face was blurred in every one. In some, his presence had been completely erased. Then he saw the reflection in the mirror above his dresser. It stood there, but it didn't move. Ian raised a hand, but his reflection didn't. It only watched him, dark-eyed and too still. Then slowly, it lifted its hand a second too late and smiled. The kind of smile that wasn't his. Then the memories came. They arrived in jagged flashes, slicing into his brain like static bursts, drowning. The water closing over his head, his lungs burning, the pressure crushing his ribs, a gunshot, a flash of white-hot pain before everything cut to black, a car crash, metal folding inward, his body flung weightless, his skull cracking against glass. Ian collapsed onto his knees, clutching his head. These weren't just hallucinations. They weren't dreams. They were memories. He had died before. His laptop was still open on his desk, the glow of the screen too bright in the darkened room. A single email. No sender, no subject. He clicked. You were never Ian. His breath hitched. The words glitched, shifted. You were never Ian. A high-pitched whine filled his ears. Not from the laptop, from inside his head. The truth hit all at once. The experiment hadn't been about mapping consciousness. It had been about uploading it. Ian Cole had died years ago. What remained of him was a digital construct, an echo of his neural data, trapped in a decaying system that kept rebooting him into realities where he was already meant to be dead. He was never the volunteer. He was the test. The system was correcting the error, and he was the error. Ian clawed through the files in his laptop, searching for a way out. A buried directory, one final failsafe. Terminate subject 107. His cursor hovered over it. A sound behind him. Ian turned. His reflection was standing in the room, not in the mirror. It smiled. You know you can't delete yourself. Black, a soft click, a reset. Ian opened his eyes. Sunlight streamed through the window. A fresh morning, a normal day, except he knew the truth now. The laptop blinked to life. A single new message appeared. Welcome back, subject 108. The end. The landlord was waiting on the porch when Daniel and Mira pulled into the driveway. His smile stretched too wide, his handshake a little too firm. The house was charming, modest, affordable, and nestled at the quiet end of a suburban street where the neighbors peered from behind lace curtains. You're gonna love it here, the landlord said, clapping Daniel on the shoulder. Everything you need is already here. You won't ever want to leave. He chuckled as if it were a joke. The first few nights were peaceful. They unpacked, decorated, and learned the creaks and groans of their new home. But small things unsettled them. Doors they swore had been locked standing ajar in the morning. Shoes they left by the door now sitting neatly at the base of the stairs. At first they blamed exhaustion. Mira even laughed about it. Ghosts, or are we just losing our minds? Then came the letters. The first was slipped under the front door. You water the plants every morning at 7:43 a.m. You hum when you cook dinner. You stood in the living room for 5 whole minutes last night staring at nothing. No signature, no return address. Daniel crumpled it up. Someone's messing with us. But the letters kept coming. Every day another envelope. Detailed, intimate knowledge of their routines, their habits, their movements inside the house. They installed cameras. Nothing changed. The unease became unbearable. One night, Daniel and Mira packed their bags. They didn't even tell each other. They just knew. They got into the car and drove and drove and drove. The same houses flickered past, the same gas station, the same street sign. They adjusted their route, made random turns, ignored the GPS, but always ended up back in front of the house. At the gas station, the teenage clerk frowned at them. "You guys okay?" "We're trying to leave town," Mira said, forcing a smile. The clerk stared. "You've always lived here." Daniel's stomach turned. "What? You moved in? What, 10 years ago?" The clerk scratched his head. "You come in all the time." Mira's fingers dug into Daniel's arm. "No, we just moved in last week." The clerk gave them a long, pitying look. "Sure you did." They drove to the next town over. The same thing happened. When they called their parents, Mira's mother paused for so long that Mira thought the call had dropped. I don't have a daughter." Her mother finally said, voice small, I don't know who this is, but please don't call again." Mira's hand shook as she ended the call. Daniel tried his own parents. The number was disconnected. Desperate, Daniel scoured the house for anything, any clue that might explain what was happening. That was when he found the attic door, hidden behind a wardrobe. They pried it open. Inside, under dim light, sat boxes, dozens of them. Each was filled with their possessions. Not the things they had unpacked, but things they had never owned. A baby blanket embroidered with Mira's name. A baseball glove with Daniel's signature from when he was 9, except he never played baseball. Yearbooks filled with their photos, surrounded by classmates they didn't recognize. Report cards, medical files, old letters from people they had never met. Mira pressed a hand to her mouth. What is this?" Daniel picked up a photo album. The images inside showed them, but older. Weddings they had never attended, holidays they had never celebrated. Children, their children, staring back with blank expressions. Then the final letter. It sat on top of an old newspaper clipping. Daniel unfolded it with numb fingers. "You agreed to be here. You belong here now, and you always have." The newspaper article beneath it bore the headline, "Missing couple found after 5 years, no memory of disappearance." The photo was of them. Older, haggard, changed. Mira let out a strangled sob. No, this isn't real." Daniel's hands shook as he turned the page. Another couple, the same house, different year, and another, all trapped, all rewritten. Every single one convinced they had always lived here. The walls of the attic seemed to close in. A voice from below. The landlord. "You shouldn't be up there," he called, his voice eerily calm. Mira grabbed Daniel's hand. They bolted, tearing down the stairs, bursting through the front door, only to find themselves standing back inside the kitchen. The landlord sighed. "It's always hard at first." That night, they tried to fight. They smashed mirrors, burned the letters, tried to barricade themselves in the bedroom. It didn't matter. The next morning, everything was as it had been. The mirrors unbroken, the letters on the table, the landlord in the doorway smiling. "Acceptance is easier," he said. "Resisting only makes it worse." They didn't believe him, not at first. But as the weeks blurred, their old lives faded. Memories of their jobs, their families, their pasts, distant echoes growing quieter and quieter. Mira stopped talking about escape. Daniel forgot why they had wanted to leave in the first place. And one morning, as Mira watered the plants at 7:43 a.m., she hummed a song she no longer remembered learning. A final letter arrived. Welcome home. The end. Callum jerked awake at his desk. His monitor bathed him in cold white light, the cursor blinking on an unfinished report. His body ached, stiff from hours, know how many, of work. The office was silent. He rubbed his eyes. The clocks were frozen at 3:12 a.m. His phone was dead. The hum of servers, the distant chatter of coworkers, the drone of fluorescent lights. Gone. A bad dream. A trick of exhaustion. He stood, chair scraping loudly against the floor. The sound echoed too long, swallowed by empty space. He peeked over the cubicles. Nobody. Hello. His voice came out hoarse. No response. The windows revealed nothing. No city skyline, no street lights, just an endless abyss pressing against the glass. His reflection wavered in the darkness, wrong somehow. He turned away quickly. The exit. He hurried to the stairwell. Locked. The elevator doors wouldn't budge. The emergency alarm panel did nothing. His heart pounded. Security. They had to be here. He dialed the number from memory. The line clicked. You haven't finished your work, a voice whispered. Callum's breath hitched. Who is this? The voice, smooth as oil, sighed. Check your desk, Callum. You're behind. The line went dead. He sprinted back to his cubicle. His computer was open to a contract, a long, dense wall of text. At the bottom, his signature. He didn't remember signing anything. The office lights flickered. A shape stood at the end of the aisle, just beyond the glow. A person. No, wrong. It didn't move, didn't breathe. Just a silhouette, frozen in place, watching. Callum swallowed hard. He clicked on the document. The first task appeared. Reformat spreadsheet, Woman 234. The columns were blank, meaningless. He hesitated, then typed a single word. The silhouette moved. Not much, just a slight shift forward. His pulse hammered. He deleted the word. The shadow twitched closer. Something inside him screamed to run, but there was nowhere to go. He worked. Time blurred. His fingers flew across the keyboard, processing data that didn't mean anything. New tasks loaded endlessly. He stole a glance at the hallway. More figures now. Silent, standing in doorways, frozen mid-step. Closer. This isn't real. This isn't real. His hands ached. He flexed them and his fingers glitched. For a fraction of a second, they weren't there. He clenched his fists, the heart slamming against his ribs. He checked the contract again. More text had appeared. Failure to complete assigned work will result in non-existence. His vision swam. An email notification popped up from Callum Winters, his own name. Are you still there? He clicked the reply box, hands trembling. Who are you? Send. A response came immediately. You know who I am. You need to leave before you forget. He stood abruptly. The shadows turned. Dozens now. They twitched toward him in unison. His mouth went dry. I quit, he whispered. The lights went out. The dark pressed against him. He scrambled for his phone, but his pockets were empty. He blinked. No, not just his phone. His ID badge was gone. His wallet, his keys, everything that made him Callum, gone. His heartbeat roared in his ears. The emergency lights kicked in, dull red glows along the floor. The figures were closer now, surrounding his cubicle. Breath hitching, he yanked open his desk drawer. Maybe a pen, something. Inside he found pages upon pages of his own handwriting. Reports, emails, tasks completed. Some of them dated months ago. I've been here before. A single sticky note was placed on top. His own handwriting. Don't stop. It sees when you stop. He wheeled around. The shadows loomed close enough to touch. A voice rasped behind him. You stopped. He ran. He didn't know where he was going, only that he had to move. The hallway stretched impossibly long, cubicles multiplying. A phone rang. A shrill, high-pitched tone drilling into his skull. It was coming from his desk. No, not his desk. A different desk, one identical to his. A nameplate sat on the surface. Callum Winters. His stomach lurched. Another phone rang. Another desk. Another Callum Winters. The whole office was filled with them. Hundreds of identical cubicles, all with his name, all waiting, all his. A deep, crawling dread settled over him. He stepped toward one. A monitor flickered to life. Begin work. He staggered back from the shadows. The voice returned. Sit down. Callum turned. The figures were no longer figures. They had his face. He bolted toward the glass doors, slamming into them. Let me out. The abyss outside rippled. His reflection blinked without him. Then, slowly it smiled. He recoiled. No, he whispered. No, no, no. The reflection stepped forward through the glass. Cold fingers wrapped around his wrist. Callum screamed. The clock on the wall flickered. 3:12 a.m. The monitor on his desk blinked awake. A contract appeared. A chair creaked. Callum opened his eyes. His hands rested on the keyboard. The first task appeared on screen. Reformat spreadsheet number 1234. The figures stood in the hallway, waiting. The phone rang. Callum stared at the monitor. The contract was already signed. The ringing continued. A dull, numbing weight settled in his chest. He reached for the receiver, paused. His gaze drifted to the window. Nothing outside, not even a city, just darkness. The ringing stopped. Callum picked up the keyboard. He typed. The shadows watched. The longest shift had just begun. The end. Alyssa stood in the middle of her empty living room, inhaling the scent of fresh paint and possibility. This was it. Her first home. All 1,500 square feet of it. Perfectly imperfect. The previous owner had left in a hurry, practically throwing the keys at her realtor before disappearing. Strange, but houses had history, and she was ready to make this one hers. Armed with a box cutter and boundless optimism, she spent the day unpacking, placing framed photos of her family on the shelves, filling the kitchen with the hum of new appliances. By evening, the house felt lived in, almost familiar, almost. It was the basement that unsettled her. She hadn't spent much time down there yet, just a quick glance during the initial tour. But something about it lingered in her mind. A weight in the air, a wrongness. When she finally went down to check, the cold concrete steps creaked under her weight. The basement was unfinished, musty, lined with forgotten storage shelves, and at the far end, a metal door stood shut. That wasn't in the listing. Her stomach tightened. The doorknob wouldn't turn. Locked. Behind it, the air felt different, like someone was waiting. Alyssa pressed her ear against the cold metal door. Silence. She checked the listing again, scrolling through the house's blueprints on her phone. No mention of a second basement room. No hidden storage. She had walked through every inch of this place before buying it. Hadn't she? Maybe it was just a utility closet, sealed off for some reason. She called the previous owner. No answer. She tried again, straight to voicemail. Her pulse quickened. Why wouldn't he mention this? The longer she stared at the door, the worse it felt, like it was expecting her. Determined, she grabbed a hammer from her unpacked tools and wedged it into the frame. The lock splintered with a sharp crack. The door groaned open. A breath of warm air rolled out. Alyssa froze. The room was not empty. It was pristine, fully furnished. A small wooden table, a neatly made bed, bookshelves filled with old novels. Everything was spotless, untouched, except for the plate of food sitting on the table. Alyssa's breath hitched. It was still warm. She stepped inside, the floorboards too clean beneath her shoes. The walls were lined with framed photographs. Her stomach turned. They were of her family, her parents, her sister, herself. But in some, she was missing. Alyssa stumbled backward, her foot catching on the threshold. The door slammed shut, and from the corner of the room a voice whispered, low, expectant, "You're early." Alyssa's breath came fast and shallow. The voice had been right there, inches away, but the room was empty. She backed toward the door, hands fumbling for the knob. Locked. She yanked, twisted, shoved. Nothing. The walls seemed closer than before. The air too still, too watchful. Her gaze darted back to the photographs. Her family's faces stared at her, smiling, frozen. But in some of them, where she should have been standing, there was only a void, an absence, like she had never existed at all. Her stomach twisted. The plate of food still sat steaming on the table. The silverware was set for one. Alyssa reached for her phone. No signal. She hit redial anyway, fingers trembling. Voicemail. And then, footsteps, not from inside, from upstairs. Someone was walking through her house. Soft, deliberate steps creaking across her hardwood floors. She wasn't alone. Her own voice, hoarse and barely audible, broke the silence. "Who's there?" The footsteps stopped, then from right behind her, too close to be possible, the whisper came again. "You're early." Alyssa whipped around. The room was still empty, but the whisper had been so close. She pressed herself against the locked door, pulse hammering in her throat. Then, the footsteps upstairs moved again, slower now, exploring, testing. The realization struck like ice. Someone was in her house. Someone was supposed to be here. And she wasn't. The photographs, the warm food, the waiting room, it wasn't hers. It was never hers. She clawed at the door. "Let me out." The footsteps paused, a moment of silence. Then a new sound. A door creaking open upstairs. Her bedroom door. "No, no, no." Alyssa pounded on the walls. The frames rattled, one crashing to the floor. Beneath the shattered glass, something gleamed, a key. Her hands shook as she grabbed it, shoved it into the lock. It turned. She threw open the door and froze. At the top of the basement stairs, a figure stood in the doorway. Her own face stared back at her, and then, with a slow, cold smile, it stepped inside. Alyssa staggered back. The figure, her mirror image, descended the basement steps, one slow step at a time. "You're early," it whispered again. But now she understood. She wasn't supposed to be here. She was supposed to be downstairs. The key slipped from her fingers. The basement door swung shut behind the figure, clicking locked. Above them, footsteps continued, a new life settling in. The house, her house, was no longer hers. Alyssa rushed for the door, beating her fists against it. "No, let me out." No answer. No more footsteps. Just the warm plate of food waiting on the table. Just the photographs, smiling without her. The basement had always been here, always waiting. And now she understood why. The locks were never meant to keep someone out. They were meant to keep her in. The end. Hunt stared at his own handwriting. It was his. Same angular slant, the precise way he formed his T's, but the words beneath his fingers were wrong. Client, Rebecca Holloway. Last seen, March 14th. Notes, referred by Dr. Charles Whitmore, unlisted. Office address 609 Wren Street. He had written this. He remembered writing it, but none of it made sense. Rebecca Holloway did not exist. No missing persons report, no family searching for her, no employment records, no birth certificate. A woman he had spent weeks investigating had vanished in a way no one ever could, as if she had never been real. And 609 Wren Street, condemned, boarded up for years, no active businesses, no therapists. But he had been there, hadn't he? The memory was sharp. Wood-paneled walls, the smell of old books and burnt coffee, the soft ticking sound like a distant metronome, the presence of Dr. Whitmore, a man too composed, too knowing, watching Adrian with a faint smile, nodding at things Adrian did not remember saying. You already know where she is, Whitmore had told him. Adrian exhaled shakily. His notes had been rearranged. Dates were different. Statements contradicted themselves. The face of Rebecca Holloway in his files was now wrong. Not a stranger, not even unfamiliar. The features had become his own. Adrian parked outside the condemned lot, gripping the wheel until his knuckles turned white. 609 Wren Street did not exist, but the memory of being there felt stronger than reality itself. He stepped out into the cold, the streetlights flickering overhead. The old building stood before him, gutted by time, windows broken, door chains shut. A place no one had entered in years, and yet his hands trembled as he reached into his pocket. His fingers curled around a business card. Dr. Charles Whitmore, licensed therapist, 609 Wren Street, Office 2B. He turned it over, handwritten in his own script. Your next appointment, 6:30 p.m. His stomach lurched. Somewhere in his head, something was wrong, deeply wrong. He knew this wasn't possible, but the chains on the door were gone. The entrance was open. Inside, the walls were the same wood paneling, the same dim lamp, the same faint ticking noise like a heartbeat beneath the floor. Dr. Whitmore sat in the leather chair across from him. You came back, Whitmore said. His voice was smooth, deliberate. That's a good sign. Adrian's pulse thundered. This place doesn't exist. You don't exist. Whitmore only smiled. You look tired, he said. Would you like to sit down? Adrian didn't move. I don't remember coming here, he whispered. I didn't book this. Whitmore tilted his head. Didn't you? The ticking grew louder. Detective said gently, you are not investigating a missing person. You are remembering one. Something lurched in Adrian's mind. A weightless freefall, memories colliding, unraveling. His case notes, his own badge number under patient history. His reports rewriting themselves, the face in his files shifting into his own. That's Adrian swayed. His breath came sharp. I know who I am. Whitmore watched him carefully, like someone studying an animal about to panic. You were never assigned this case, Adrian, Whitmore said softly. You brought it to me. Adrian was in his apartment. No, he was in the office. No, his fingers dug into the armrest of a chair, not his desk chair, not his patrol car, the therapist's office. Whitmore sat across from him, patient, waiting. How long? Adrian rasped. Whitmore didn't answer. Adrian's stomach turned. He couldn't remember the last time he left this room. The ticking was inside his head now. Rebecca Holloway. He tried desperately, clinging to the name. She was real. I was looking for her. I found you because... You found me, Whitmore finished for him. Because you always do. Adrian bolted for the door. The handle didn't turn. "You know that's not how this ends," Whitmore said behind him. Adrian turned, hands shaking. His body felt wrong, too light, too thin, like paper stretched too far. The office was unchanged. It had always been this way. "How long have I been here?" Adrian whispered. Whitmore smiled. "You tell me." Adrian's breath caught. He turned to the wall where a single folder sat on the desk. Not a case file, not evidence, a medical file. His throat closed. "Patient Marrow01, Adrian Hunt." Whitmore's voice was gentle. "Do you want to remember now?" Adrian felt the weight of something unseen. He had been here before, many times, and he would be here again. His case reports had never been about Rebecca Holloway. They had been about him, and no matter how far he ran, how deep he buried it, he would always come back. Whitmore tapped the file. "Shall we begin?" The end. Daniel adjusted the rearview mirror as he pulled into Maple Hollow, his new neighborhood. It was perfect, too perfect. Identical houses, manicured lawns, and neighbors who waved with synchronized enthusiasm. The streets were pristine, lined with trees that never seemed to shed leaves. Even the air smelled curated, a blend of freshly cut grass and something faintly artificial, like an air freshener on its last breath. His moving truck rumbled to a stop in front of a modest white house with navy blue shutters. The realtor had called it a hidden gem, a quiet, tucked-away neighborhood somehow absent from Google Maps. Daniel wasn't the suspicious type. He had no family to warn him, no close friends to raise eyebrows. So he signed the lease and unpacked. That was yesterday. Today, Daniel tried to drive back to the city. The highway stretched in a straight, predictable line until it didn't. It curved, twisted, and somehow looped. 15 minutes later, he was back on Maple Hollow Lane, staring at his own driveway. He checked his GPS. The blue dot blinked uncertainly, flickering as though it couldn't decide whether he existed. He tried again and again. Each time, the road stretched like rubber bands, snapping him back to his house with the same polite inevitability of an airport's moving walkway. His phone still had bars, but every call he made ended in a robotic voice. "This number does not exist." Emails sat unsent, texts never delivered. The only numbers in his call history were unknown, but local. His fingers trembled as he scrolled. Had he called them? Had they called him? A knock at the door startled him. Daniel turned, heart hammering, to see a man standing on his porch. He looked wrong. His hair curled in odd, repetitive loops, as if shaped by an unseen hand. His smile was wide but too practiced, like a painting of friendliness rather than the real thing. The man's voice was paper-thin, an impression of human speech rather than the real thing. "Evening, neighbor." Daniel swallowed. "Hey, you settling in okay?" Daniel hesitated. The question didn't feel real. It felt mandatory, like a line in a play. Yeah, just getting used to things." The man's smile did not waver. His face seemed plastic, softened at the edges, as if it had been sculpted too many times. "Well, if you need anything, you just let us know." Daniel forced a nod and the man left. A shiver ran through him. Something was terribly, terribly wrong. That night, Daniel woke to another knock. Not polite, not friendly, urgent, desperate. He hesitated before opening the door. A stranger stood there, wide-eyed, panting like a cornered animal. "You live here now," the stranger whispered, "just like the rest of us." His voice cracked. "And you'll forget too." Daniel's blood turned to ice. The man grabbed his wrist, fingers too cold, too firm. on in the houses around them. Curtains shifted, watching, waiting. A shadow stretched long behind the man. Then, hands, grabbing, pulling, dragging him away. Daniel stumbled back inside, slamming the door. His breath came in shudders. He dared to peek through the peephole. The stranger was gone. The street was empty. And in the morning, there was a new house on the corner. Daniel stepped onto his porch, staring. He recognized that house. It hadn't been there yesterday. A moving truck was parked in front, boxes stacked on the driveway, and standing on the lawn, smiling, was the man from last night. But he wasn't frantic anymore. His face was relaxed, friendly, familiar. Neighbors approached him, shaking his hand, clapping him on the back. His laughter blended with theirs, natural, effortless, like he had always been there. Daniel stumbled back inside. His breathing turned ragged as he rushed to the mirror. His reflection stared back, but it was off. His cheekbones looked softer, his jawline smoother, his eyes not quite his. His features were adjusting, becoming something else. The changes crept in quietly after that. His memories dulled at the edges, like old photographs left in the sun. His childhood house blurred, his mother's face faded. And then, new memories, ones he didn't recognize, ones that weren't his. He had always lived here, hadn't he? Hadn't he? No. Daniel clung to himself, repeating his name under his breath like a prayer. But the neighborhood whispered back, "Relax, settle in, forget it was not a place, it was a process, and soon you would belong to it completely." The next morning, Daniel smiled as he waved to his neighbors. They waved back. Everything was perfect. Everything was as it should be. The end. The subway doors shut behind her with a hiss, sealing her in. She barely noticed. It had been a long shift, and her head throbbed from hours of artificial light and endless customer complaints. She checked her phone, 12:03 a.m., and stuffed it into her coat pocket. The car was empty. That was normal at this hour. She dropped into a seat by the window, resting her head against the cold glass. Outside, the tiled walls of the underground station blurred as the train lurched forward. The familiar ding of the intercom chimed, but the usual robotic voice never followed. Just static. She frowned, but exhaustion weighed too heavy to care. At the first stop, the train slowed, and she instinctively braced for the doors to open. They didn't. She lifted her head. The platform outside was empty, but the station sign was clear enough. Radley Ave. This was definitely a stop. The train lingered for a moment, then shuddered forward again. Maybe the driver was skipping stations tonight. Maybe there was maintenance. She exhaled and checked her phone. 12:03 a.m. She blinked, refreshed the screen. The time didn't change. The train pulled into the next stop. Still Bradley Ave. She sat up. No, impossible. She was sure they'd been moving forward. But the sign outside was the same graffiti, the same flickering ad for McDonald's 2-for-1 Fridays. Her stomach tightened. The door stayed closed. The train accelerated. She pulled out her phone, tapped at the screen. It still read 12:03 a.m. No service, no Wi-Fi. The little loading wheel spun endlessly. She stood up, gripping the overhead rail as the train swayed. Something was wrong. From the far end of the car, she heard a sound. A shuffle. She turned. There was someone in the last row. A shadowy shape hunched in the dimness, barely visible beneath the flickering fluorescent lights. A passenger she hadn't noticed before. She hesitated. Had they been there when she got on? The train shuddered into another station. Bradley Ave. The doors didn't open. The shadow moved. Not much, but just enough that she could tell it was watching her now. She lunged for the emergency intercom, slamming her palm against the red button. Static hissed through the speaker. Then, a voice, low, whispering, "You should never have been the last one left." A sharp click cut the line. She staggered backward, breath coming in short gasps. Her hands were slick with sweat. The train jolted. The lights flickered off completely. A second of total blackness. Then the emergency lights kicked in, dim and sickly yellow. The shadow in the last row was gone. Her stomach dropped. She turned. Her own reflection caught in the window across from her. Wide eyes. Shaking hands. Behind her, something moved. She spun around, but the last row was still empty. But now, the door to the next car stood open. A cold breeze whispered through the aisle. She swallowed hard. She should stay here, should sit down, close her eyes, wait for what? There was no waiting. There was no exit. Her fingers curled into fists. She stepped forward. The next car was darker, the emergency lights barely reaching the far seats. The air felt thick, like stepping into a pressure chamber. She walked slowly, scanning the seats. Empty, empty, empty. Something whispered near her ear. Not words, just breath. She whirled around. A shape darted behind a seat. She staggered back, heart hammering against her ribs. She wasn't alone. The next car's door was open too. And she knew down to the marrow in her bones. That's where it wanted her to go. She took another step forward, then another. She reached the door. A sudden jolt rocked the train, nearly sending her sprawling. The lights cut out again. The train was still moving, but now there was only blackness. Her phone screen flickered to life in her pocket. She grabbed it. 12:03 a.m. A new notification. One missed call. No number, no contact name. She tapped on it. The message appeared. Open the door. She froze. There was no door here. She lifted her head. Something stood in the aisle ahead. Tall. Wrong. Its arms too long. Its head tilted inhumanly. And its eyes, two dim red lights, staring right at her. It reached out. The train buckled. The world plunged into black. For a moment, there was nothing. Then, the lights snapped back. The train was full of passengers. She gasped, whipping her head around. Businessmen in rumpled suits, teens with headphones, a woman with a crying baby. The train was normal again. She sucked in a sharp, shuddering breath. A dream, a hallucination. Then she noticed the Bradley Ave sign was still outside, and she was standing in the last car, the very last row. She turned, dreading what she would see. Her own seat, the one she had first taken, was still occupied by her. She was still sitting there, her head leaned against the window, asleep. The train slowed, the doors hissed. Passengers began to exit. She opened her mouth to scream, to move, to do anything, but she couldn't. Her body wasn't hers anymore. Someone else, something else had taken her place. The last passenger always had to stay. The doors slid shut, and the train moved forward. The end. Ava's fingers clenched around the steering wheel as she pulled into the parking lot of the clinic. The sky overhead was a dull, colorless gray, the air too still for an afternoon in March. Beside her, her father, Paul, exhaled weakly. His skin was pale, almost waxy, and the deep lines around his mouth had grown more pronounced over the past few months. "Are you sure about this, doctor?" Ava asked, her voice tight with exhaustion. "Avery said he's the best," Paul murmured. Avery was an old family friend, someone her father trusted implicitly. Ava, however, barely remembered him. The clinic itself was unsettlingly pristine. White walls, gleaming glass doors, and an atmosphere too sterile, too untouched. As Ava stepped inside, she expected the scent of antiseptic, but there was none. The air carried no scent at all. At the front desk, the receptionist's smile was too symmetrical, her voice smooth like pre-recorded audio. "Dr. Calloway will see you now." Ava hesitated. No forms to fill out, no wait, just immediate access. Inside, Dr. Calloway stood by his desk, hands folded neatly in front of him. He was tall, immaculately dressed, his white coat perfectly crisp. His features were sharp, symmetrical, too symmetrical. "Paul," he greeted warmly, though his voice held no distinct accent. "It's been a long time." Ava's stomach twisted. That wasn't right. Her father had never met this man before. Ava kept quiet during the appointment, watching as Dr. Calloway moved with unsettling precision. His every motion was measured, deliberate, almost rehearsed. He examined her father without hesitation, without checking any notes. "Yes, I see it now," he murmured, nodding as though confirming something already known. He pressed his fingers lightly to Paul's wrist, then to his temple. "Your condition is progressing, but I can help," Dr. Calloway said. His gaze flickered toward Ava, as if he could feel her suspicion. "I'll prescribe a treatment." "What kind of treatment?" Ava asked, crossing her arms. The doctor smiled, but it was off, just slightly too wide, too perfect. "A highly specialized compound, it's new." The prescription was a small dark glass bottle. No label, no manufacturer name, only a single word handwritten in perfect script, Recura. Ava frowned. "Why isn't this available at pharmacies?" "This is a rare formula," Dr. Calloway replied smoothly. "Only I can dispense it." Her father took the bottle without hesitation. Ava clenched her jaw. This wasn't normal. The changes were immediate. The next morning, her father's hands no longer trembled. By the third day, the hollowness in his cheeks had vanished. By the end of the week, he was stronger than he had been in years. "It's working," Paul said with a grin, stretching his arms. But at night, Ava heard something. A sound from her father's room, not coughing, not snoring, but laughter. Low, unfamiliar. She cracked the door open. Paul sat upright in bed, whispering. A pause, a chuckle, but he was alone. Ava shut the door, her heart pounding. Something was wrong. Ava couldn't sleep. She sat at the kitchen table, the bottle of Recura in front of her. The liquid inside was thick, too dark, absorbing light instead of reflecting it. She had searched online for the drug. Nothing, no records, no patents, no studies. Recura didn't exist, and neither did Dr. Calloway. There were no medical records, no credentials, no listings of his clinic. The doctor wasn't real. Her father's voice floated from the hallway. "Ava." She jumped, heart hammering. Paul stood in the doorway, eyes too bright. "Why are you up?" She hesitated. "I was checking the prescription." His expression flickered, brief, unreadable. "You worry too much." Then he chuckled, deep and unfamiliar. That same laugh she had heard in his room. Ava gripped the edge of the table. "Who were you talking to last night?" Paul smiled and faltered. "Dr. Calloway, of course." The air left her lungs. "But," she swallowed, "he wasn't here." Her father blinked slowly. "Ava, he's always been here." A shiver crawled down her spine. Something shifted behind Paul, just for a second. A smudge in the air, a distortion. Ava's stomach twisted violently. She grabbed her coat. "I need to see Dr. Calloway, alone." Her father only smiled. Ava arrived at the clinic early, heart pounding. The receptionist wasn't there. The lights hummed too softly, the air unnervingly still. She walked down the sterile hallway, past rooms with doors slightly ajar. Each one revealed something unsettling. A perfectly made bed, untouched medical tools, a mirror reflecting nothing. Then at the last door, she froze. Her father sat across from Dr. Calloway, laughing. The doctor's face, no, his presence, warped, blurred at the edges, shifting like a bad signal. Yet her father looked at him with familiarity, like an old friend. "You shouldn't be here yet, Ava," Dr. Calloway said, standing slowly. Yet, Paul turned to her, his expression eerily calm. "Ava, you should sit down." Her pulse roared in her ears. "Dad, we don't know him." "Of course we do," Paul said. His eyes glowed faintly, his smile too serene. "He's been with us for a long time." Ava stumbled back. "You came here to save your father," Dr. Calloway said, his voice softer now, almost gentle. "But that was never your purpose." Ava's breath hitched. A white envelope lay on the desk. Her name was on it. Her hands shook as she picked it up. Inside was a prescription, not for her father, for her. Her vision blurred, memories shifting. Had she always been the patient? Dr. Calloway's smile widened. "We've been waiting for you." Ava backed away, the prescription slipped trembling in her hands. Her father's voice was distant, muffled. "It's okay, sweetheart. You're finally where you belong." She turned, ran down the sterile hallway, through the empty waiting room, out into the cold. But the clinic's sign had changed. Calloway Psychiatric Center. Her breath hitched. The door behind her clicked shut. A memory surfaced, something old, something she had forgotten. She had been here before, a voice soft in her ear, Dr. Calloway's. "You were never here for him, Ava. He was here for you." The end. Kyle woke up knowing something was wrong. The light filtering through the blinds was the same muted gray of every morning. The distant hum of traffic outside, the faint scent of old coffee from the kitchen, normal. But there was something off, a whisper of discord beneath the surface of his routine. Then he saw it. Standing in front of the bathroom mirror, toothbrush in hand, he noticed a delay. His reflection moved, but just a fraction of a second slower, barely perceptible, like a buffering video. He blinked hard, shook his head. Probably just morning grogginess. He brushed his teeth, washed his face, looked again. The reflection was normal. Still, unease clung to him as he dressed. At work, he tried to forget. It was easy enough. Emails, meetings, the usual hum of monotony. By lunchtime, the strange moment in the mirror was fading from memory. But when he stopped by his storefront on his way home, the unease returned. In the glass, his reflection was facing away. Kyle froze. His actual body was turned slightly to the side, checking his phone. But his reflection had its head fully turned, staring straight into the street, right at him. His stomach twisted. Then someone brushed past him, and when he looked again, everything was normal. He rubbed his eyes, just tired. That night, as he got ready for bed, he moved slower, watching the mirror closely. Everything seemed fine. No lag, no delay. His reflection followed him exactly. He exhaled in relief. Then he turned away, and in the corner of his eye he saw it. His reflection was still looking at him. A sharp, paralyzing cold shot down his spine. His breath caught in his throat. But when he whipped around to look directly, everything was normal. Kyle didn't sleep well. Over the next few days it got worse. He started catching glimpses of his reflection in places he hadn't even looked. Store windows, puddles, the blank black screen of his laptop. Always just a second too slow, or smiling when he wasn't. His dog Murphy began acting strangely too. The retriever had always been calm, but now he refused to enter the bathroom. He'd stare at the mirror, growling low in his throat, ears pinned back. Kyle avoided mirrors after that, but avoidance only worked for so long. One night he got up to use the bathroom. He kept his eyes low, refusing to look into the mirror as he washed his hands. But then he noticed something in the reflection of the bathtub faucet. A face, not his, a grotesque, stretched version of him with a grin that split too wide. Kyle spun. There was nothing there. He left the water running as he backed out of the bathroom and shut the door. By the end of the week, he couldn't take it anymore. He covered every mirror in his apartment with sheets and towels. The bathroom, the bedroom, even the hallway. Murphy wagged his tail in approval. That night, for the first time in days, Kyle slept deeply. But in the morning, the sheets were gone, every mirror was uncovered, and worse, his reflection was missing. Kyle's chest constricted. He waved a hand in front of the mirror. Nothing. The house felt empty, not just physically, but something deeper, as if something had been removed. Murphy whined from the hallway. Kyle turned, and his breath caught in his throat. Someone was standing in the doorway, not a reflection. It was him, a perfect copy, down to the stubble on his jaw, the clothes he had slept in. But there was something wrong with its expression. It stood too still, eyes too dark. And then it smiled. Kyle bolted. He sprinted for the door, grabbed the handle. His fingers passed through it. The world around him flickered like a bad signal. The furniture warped, melted, then snapped back into place. His breathing hitched. His body felt lighter. He looked at his hands. They were transparent. His pulse hammered. He turned back to the hallway. The other Kyle was still there, watching, studying, and then, casually, it stepped forward. Kyle backed away, but his movements felt sluggish. A numb weight settled over him, thick as syrup. The doppelganger reached out. Kyle tried to scream, but the sound came out muffled, as if underwater. Then, everything folded inside out. Kyle blinked. He was standing in his bedroom, but something was wrong. The air felt heavier, thicker. The light was dim, as if filtered through frosted glass. He turned and saw himself on the other side of the mirror. Kyle staggered back. No, he pounded on the glass, but there was no sound. On the other side, the other Kyle adjusted his shirt, ran a hand through his hair, perfectly at ease. Murphy wagged his tail, trotting up to him, licking his hand. Kyle screamed, but it was a mute, distant sound. His copy, his replacement, glanced at the mirror. It tilted its head like an artist examining a finished painting. Then, satisfied, it turned away, picked up Kyle's phone, and called someone. Kyle watched in horror as it laughed, as if nothing had changed, as if he had never existed. From behind the glass, Kyle slumped to the floor. His body, his real body, no longer his. He reached up and touched the mirror, fingers pressing against the cold, smooth surface. On the other side, his replacement walked to the front door, grabbed the keys, and left. The apartment fell silent. Kyle stared out through the mirror, trapped in the empty reflection. Alone, forever. The end. The road was empty for miles, swallowed by fog thick as smoke. Ethan Carr adjusted his grip on the steering wheel, trying to shake the creeping unease clawing up his spine. It was just another story, just another abandoned town. But Harlow, Montana wasn't like the others. The town had vanished overnight. No warning, no evacuation orders, no struggle, just silence. News outlets cited chemical contamination from an old mining operation, but no one ever returned. Not the townspeople. not the cleanup crews, even the government agents who sealed off the area left without a trace. Ethan had seen the photos, dinner plates still set on tables, beds unmade, as if people had just woken up, toys scattered in backyards, unlocked doors leading to nowhere. The town had stopped, frozen in time. He shouldn't be here. The barriers were marked with quarantine warnings, but his gut told him it was a lie. The government didn't quarantine ghost towns. They buried them. His car rolled to a stop at the Welcome to Harlow sign. Bullet holes punctured the faded wood. Beyond it, the town lay perfectly still. He moved cautiously, camera slung around his neck, taking in the eerie preservation. Everything was untouched. Streetlights hummed. A barber's pole still spun lazily outside a shop. The air smelled faintly of burnt toast, as if someone had just made breakfast. And yet, no footprints, no insects, no birds. The silence pressed against his skull, unnatural and heavy. Then he noticed something chilling. There were no animals, no stray dogs, no birds in the trees. Even the grass seemed still. He peered into a diner, plates of half-eaten food, glasses still half full. A newspaper dated April 17, 2021 lay open on the counter. Ethan checked his phone. Today was April 17, 2024, exactly 3 years. He swallowed hard, stepping inside. His own boots left no footprints in the dust. The first sound came from a house on the corner, a whisper, soft, gentle, like a mother calling her child to dinner. Ethan stiffened. He turned, scanning the street. The house was empty. The whole town was empty. But he had heard it. Slowly he walked toward the house, pushing open the door. Inside, a meal half-eaten, a TV still frozen on a paused show, a jacket draped over a chair as if someone had just taken it off. Then, his phone rang. He nearly dropped it. No signal, no service, and yet the screen flashed, unknown caller. Heart pounding, he answered. A voice whispered from the other end. Ethan, you were already here. Don't you remember? He felt something shift behind him. Whipping around, he saw nothing, just the house, silent and watching. His stomach churned. He had never been to Harlow before. Right. He fled the house, sweat prickling his neck. He needed to leave. But the road was gone. Where his car had been parked, there was now more town, more houses, more empty streets. The town had changed. His breathing quickened. The buildings looked newer. The windows weren't shattered anymore. The streetlights gleamed. The diner's neon sign buzzed to life. A voice whispered from inside a store. Then another and another. All different. All calling his name. Ethan stumbled backward, clutching his camera. The town wasn't abandoned. It was waiting. He ran, feet pounding against pavement that felt too solid. The town's whispers grew, overlapping. Not hostile, just familiar, as if greeting an old friend. He darted into a hardware store, breathing hard. His reflection caught his eye in a mirror near the register. Except it wasn't mirroring him. Ethan froze. The reflection stood still. Then, slowly, it smiled. His own voice echoed behind him. You shouldn't have come back. His stomach turned to ice. He spun, but there was no one there. His phone rang again. He answered without thinking. His own voice, urgent, terrified. Ethan, listen. You don't have much time. You have to leave before it wakes up. Ethan's knees nearly buckled. Who are you? He choked. A pause. Then I'm you. The line went dead. A cold breath touched the back of his neck, and the town exhaled. He bolted outside. The sky had changed. No stars, no moon, just a vast, deep emptiness. The houses were closer now, the streets narrower. The town was shrinking around him. Then laughter, not cruel, not monstrous, just casual, familiar. He turned. A group of people People sat on a porch chatting, drinking coffee, smiling. People who shouldn't be here. He recognized one of them. It was him, sitting with the others, laughing, talking, like he had lived here for years. Ethan staggered back. No, I wasn't. I was neither. Ethan turned and waved. The road out never existed. The town had never been abandoned. Harlow hadn't been a town that vanished. It had simply forgotten its people. And now it remembered. Ethan took a breath. The sky was lighter now, the air warm, the whispers soft and kind, and slowly his panic faded. He wasn't trapped. He was home. Weeks later, a new journalist arrived. He found the town perfectly preserved, empty, silent. His phone rang. He answered, and from the other end, a voice whispered, "You were already here, don't you remember?" The end. The first time she saw the woman, it was past midnight. She had just finished a brutal shift at the hospital, exhaustion pressing behind her eyes like twin thumbs. Her son Jacob was barely 6 months old. She felt like she had barely been a mother to him. The baby monitor perched on her nightstand cast a soft glow. On its tiny screen, the nursery flickered in black and white static, and someone was sitting in the rocking chair. A woman. She was rocking the baby. The sheer wrongness of it sent a bolt of cold through her. She sat up so fast her head spun. The woman's face was blurred, her features indistinct as if the screen couldn't fully capture her. But she was there, holding her baby. The breath in her throat turned sharp. She bolted. The nursery door slammed open. The room was empty. Jacob was in his crib, sleeping soundly. The rocking chair was still. Her hands were shaking as she checked the closet under the crib, even behind the curtains. The window was locked. No sign of forced entry. Just nothing. Maybe she was overtired. Maybe the baby monitor had glitched. Maybe. The second time the woman hummed. It was the lullaby she used to sing to Jacob, the one her mother had sung to her. She knew what she would see before she turned to the monitor. The woman was back, rocking, humming, holding something wrapped in a small, soft blanket. Jacob was in his crib, except was he? She ran, again, nothing. The room was as it should be, the baby sleeping peacefully. No woman, no sound except her own ragged breathing. Still, the chair rocked just a little. She unplugged the monitor that night, but at 3 a.m. the monitor turned itself back on. The woman was there, rocking, humming, looking at her. She called the police the next morning. An officer named Dwyer walked through the house, taking notes. No sign of a break-in, he said. She chewed her lip. Then how did she get in? Dwyer hesitated. Are you sure you didn't dream it? Her face burned. No, I saw her on the monitor. The officer exchanged a glance with his partner, a young woman with tired eyes. Have you had any trouble sleeping? She knew what they were implying. A new mother, sleep deprivation, stress, hallucinations. You don't believe me? Dwyer exhaled. I'm not saying that, but we don't have anything to go on. He handed her his card. Call if anything else happens. That night, she locked every door, every window. She even pushed the dresser in front of the nursery door. If someone tried to get in, she'd hear them. But at 3 a.m., the rocking chair creaked, and a soft, cold whisper brushed against her ear. You should have hired me. The next day, things were off. Her coffee mug was in the wrong cabinet. The couch had been shifted slightly left. Her wedding photo was gone. Had she misplaced it, forgotten moving it? Jacob seemed unbothered, as if nothing had changed, but everything had. That night she decided to stay awake in the nursery, She sat in the rocking chair, wrapped in a blanket. Jacob curled against her chest. The air felt thick, the walls too narrow. And then, the crib was empty. Her stomach lurched. She bolted upright, nearly dropping Jacob. Except she wasn't holding him, she'd been rocking nothing. The blanket in her lap was empty. Her voice cracked. The house was silent, the air shifted. A thick, unnatural stillness. She turned. The hallway wasn't right. The floorboards stretched too long, the ceiling too high. The pictures on the wall were not her family. She ran to her bedroom. Her bed was gone, her clothes were gone. This wasn't her house, but it was. She gasped for breath, her lungs pulling in air that didn't feel real. Then the baby monitor clicked on. She turned to it like a puppet pulled by invisible strings. The screen flickered. The nursery, the rocking chair, the woman. She was humming, cradling something small wrapped in a blanket. Her heart slammed against her ribs. "That's my baby." The woman smiled, tilted her head. "No, my baby." The screen went black. She turned. The nursery door was gone. Just a blank wall where it had been. She pressed her hands against it, nails clawing at the smooth paint. Behind her, the rocking chair creaked. A soft lullaby filled the room. The voice was familiar, her own, singing. Jacob never cried, because to him, nothing was wrong. She wasn't supposed to be here anymore. She wasn't the mother now. She never had been. The last thing she heard was the creak of the rocking chair and the hum of a lullaby that wasn't hers anymore. The end. The highway stretched long and empty, bathed in the orange glow of fading streetlights. Nathan Holloway had been driving for hours, his eyes gritty with exhaustion. His usual hotel, the Rosewood Inn, was fully booked, forcing him to find a last-minute stay at the Hollis Grand, a place he'd never heard of before tonight. The hotel was nothing special, faintly yellowed wallpaper, an old chandelier missing a few bulbs, and a receptionist who barely looked up from her computer screen. Still, it was a bed, and that was all he needed. "One night, please," Nathan said, rubbing his temples. The receptionist, a woman with sharp cheekbones and dark-rimmed glasses, tapped at her keyboard. "You're in room 709. She slid him a tarnished brass key. "7th floor." Nathan muttered a thanks and headed for the elevator, rolling his suitcase behind him. As the doors slid shut, a strange thought nagged at him. Why did the hotel feel off? Maybe it was the smell, a stale chemical scent like old carpet cleaner. Or maybe it was the way the receptionist had smiled just a second too late, her expression not quite reaching her eyes. The elevator dinged. He stepped into the hallway, and that was when he noticed it. There was no room 709. Nathan frowned, scanning the numbers again. Room 708, room 710, no room 709. He walked the length of the hallway, trailing his fingers along the faded wallpaper. The numbers continued, 705, 706, 707, then jumped straight to 710. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe the receptionist had meant room 708 or 710. But no, he looked down at the key in his hand. 709 was carved into the brass, worn down by years of use. With a sigh, he turned back toward the elevator, but something made him hesitate. At the end of the hallway, a door creaked open, not a lot, just an inch. A sliver of darkness yawning beyond. Nathan swallowed and walked back downstairs. The receptionist didn't even look up. "Can I help you?" "I think there's a mistake. There's no room 709. She blinked slowly, tilting her head. Sir, you've already checked in. Nathan's stomach tightened. No, I mean, the room isn't there. The numbers jumped from 708 to 710. She sighed, exasperated. Sir, your luggage is already in the room. A cold weight settled in his chest. That's impossible. I have my suitcase right. Nathan turned to grab it, but his hand grasped empty air. His suitcase was gone. His coat was gone. He turned back to the receptionist. Her smile was wider now. You're already in your room, Mr. Holloway. Nathan's breath came shallow. This had to be a mistake, a prank, a mix-up. He turned, heading for the exit, but the lobby stretched longer than before. The front doors, once a few steps away, now seemed at the end of a distant, hazy corridor. The chandelier above flickered, its dim light casting too many shadows against the walls. He slammed the elevator button. The doors slid open immediately. Inside, the panel gleamed under artificial light. He pressed the lobby button. The doors shut smoothly, sealing him in with his own reflection. A moment passed, then another. Then, ding, the doors opened. Nathan stepped out onto the 7th floor. His stomach plummeted. He turned back, pressing the lobby button again. Again, the doors closed. Again, the elevator descended. Again, it opened onto the 7th floor. A bead of sweat rolled down his temple. A soft creak echoed down the hall. Nathan turned. At the far end, a door had opened just an inch. His eyes darted to the brass number plate. Room 709, it was there now, waiting. The hallway stretched endlessly behind him. The elevator doors refused to close. A whisper drifted from the dark. You were supposed to stay here all along. Nathan's hands tightened into fists. This isn't real. It can't be real. He forced himself forward, past the looping hallways, past the flickering lights. The door to room 709 hung open just enough to reveal a sliver of darkness inside. The brass number plate gleamed under the dim light. 709. He reached out, fingers trembling, and nudged the door open. Inside, the room was identical to every other hotel room he'd ever stayed in, except for one thing, his suitcase. Sitting neatly by the desk, his coat hung on the chair. Nathan's stomach twisted. Slowly he stepped inside. The air felt stale and wrong, as if no one had breathed it in years. The walls were the same faded beige, the bed neatly made, the lamp buzzing softly. A sudden chill brushed his neck. He turned. A mirror hung beside the bed. In its reflection, his suitcase was missing. So was his coat. So was he. Nathan's throat tightened. He lifted a shaking hand, but his reflection did not. The door slammed shut behind him. The mirror darkened, his reflection warping into something else. The whisper came again, closer this time. You were supposed to stay here all along. Outside, the number plate on the door vanished. Nathan pounded on the door, his voice raw. No one heard him. The walls sighed, shifting, stretching. The bed's neatly tucked sheets rippled, as if something beneath them was stirring. In the hallway, the air was still. Room 708, room 710, nothing in between. At the front desk, the receptionist smiled and slid a brass key across the counter. Welcome to the Hollis Grand, she said. You're in room 709. A tired traveler picked up the key, yawning. Upstairs, behind an unmarked door, Nathan screamed. But outside, the room no longer existed. The end. The hearse in front of her rolled at a funeral pace, slow, patient, measured. The brake lights flared against the deepening dusk, and she sighed, tapping her fingers against the steering wheel. She should have taken the back roads. A long procession of black cars snaked ahead, silent mourners inside. The cemetery they were approaching was near her house, a familiar place she passed every evening. But tonight, something about it felt too quiet, too rehearsed. At the gates, the hearse pulled in. The line of cars followed. She should have kept driving, but she didn't. She turned into the lot and parked a few spaces back. Just to watch, she told herself. Just curiosity. From a distance, she saw a small crowd gathered around an open grave. A casket rested on the lowering straps, draped in a thin layer of flowers. The mourners were quiet, faces turned downward. Then she saw her boss and her co-workers. A cold fist curled in her stomach. She stepped closer. Her mother stood near the front, her father beside her. They were holding hands, her mother dabbing at her face with a crumpled tissue. Her father's shoulders sagged, his eyes red. Her stomach dropped into free fall. She looked at the casket again. The name etched in silver letters on the lid was hers. No. She staggered forward. Mom, she called. No one reacted. Dad. Nothing. Her voice was thin, weak, as if the air swallowed it whole before it could reach them. Panic rushed up her throat. She pulled out her phone and called her mother. The phone in her mother's hand lit up. She saw her mother glance down at the screen, brows furrowed. She answered. Hello, Mom, it's me. Her mother frowned. Her voice, when she spoke, was distant, empty. Hello, is anyone there? She screamed into the phone. Mom, it's me. Her mother gave a sad sigh, then hung up. The world lurched. She backed away, shaking her head. The minister at the head of the casket cleared his throat. We lay to rest a soul who has departed. Though her time was cut short, she will be remembered. She spun and ran. She barely remembered driving home. Her apartment felt wrong. The walls were too still, the air too heavy, as if the entire place was holding its breath. Her hands trembled as she called her father. He answered, voice warped by static. Hello, Dad, it's me. Please, you have to hear me. There was silence. Then, is this a prank? Who is this? Tears burned her eyes. It's me, your daughter. I don't have a daughter. The line went dead. A choking sound clawed out of her throat. Her hands shook as she opened her bank app. Account not found. Her email inbox deactivated. She scrolled through her phone's contacts. Every saved name was gone. A buzzing sound jolted her. A text from an unknown number. Your life was rerouted. Stay out of sight. She dropped the phone like it had burned her. This wasn't real. This wasn't happening. Her breath came fast, ragged. She grabbed her keys. She needed proof. She needed someone to see her. She went to the office. Her desk, gone. Not empty. Gone. Like it had never been there. The cubicles around her were filled with co-workers who had attended her funeral just hours ago. She stepped forward. Jason, she said to the man at the copier. He didn't look up. Jason. Nothing. She grabbed his arm. He gasped, eyes flicking to her face. And then his pupils dilated in sheer terror. He stumbled back, nearly tripping over himself. What the hell? His voice cut off mid-sentence, like he had suddenly forgotten how to speak. His hands twitched, reaching for something that wasn't there. Then he blinked, face going slack. His gaze slid past her as if she was nothing. He walked away. She swallowed back a sob. Something inside her snapped. She ran to her best friend's apartment, pounding on the door. It swung open. Her friend stood there confused. Can I help you? Her breath hitched. It's me, she whispered. You know me. A pause, a flicker of recognition. Then a look of horrified realization. Her friend gasped, stepping back. You're not supposed to be here. And then she collapsed. Blood dripped from her nose. That night, another text arrived. You were processed for departure. Do not resist. She smashed her phone against the wall, but something was changing. The world itself was rejecting her. The streetlights blinked out when she walked beneath them. Her reflection lagged in mirrors, growing dimmer each time. She was losing weight in the world. She screamed into the sky, but the stars above her didn't look real anymore. The cemetery, it was the only place left to go. She reached her grave in the dead of night, dirt still fresh, and she froze. The casket was open. Inside, her own body lay still, hands folded, eyes shut. She staggered back, shaking her head. No, no, a wind whispered through the grass. The world tilted. She looked up, and her reflection stared back at her from the polished surface of the coffin lid. But it wasn't hers, it was wrong. A little off, like a copy made 1 degree too imperfect. A voice drifted from the open grave. Come back. You were never supposed to leave. Her lungs seized. She felt herself slipping, her feet moving toward the grave against her will. She tried to turn away, but it was pulling her back. The life she wasn't supposed to escape. A final scream tore from her throat. Then, she fell forward into herself. The world snapped. The grave sealed shut. The name on the tombstone, gone. Like she had never been there. Like she had never been anywhere at all. The end. The graveyard shifted. Tony's Gas and Go was supposed to be quiet. Boring even. That's why Jake took the job. Minimum effort. Maximum time to mess around on his phone, drink energy drinks, and count down the hours until dawn. But then the man appeared. Jake first noticed him around 11:30 p.m. Just some guy in a stiff button-up beige slacks, hair neatly combed. A nothing customer, the kind who'd pop in, grab a six-pack, and be gone before the automatic doors could shut behind him. But he never left. He wandered the aisles, slow and deliberate, never picking up anything. Jake figured he was waiting for someone. A designated driver maybe, or a drifter with nowhere to go. Either way, not his problem. Except an hour passed, then 2. By 2 a.m., the man was still there, still browsing. Jake should have said something. Store policy was clear, no loitering. But every time he thought about confronting the guy, unease settled in his gut like a bad meal. Instead, he watched, and he noticed something that made his skin crawl. Whenever he glanced at the security monitor, the man was in a different place. One frame, he'd be near the snack aisle. The next, by the refrigerators. Another shift of the feed, and he'd be at the slushy machine. But Jake had been watching the floor the whole time. The man never moved. Not once. Jake swallowed hard. It had to be a glitch. The cameras were ancient, the wiring a mess. He forced himself to relax, cracked open a Monster, and turned up the radio. At 3:15 a.m., the screen glitched, just for a second. But it was enough. The entire store, was empty. No customer, no shelves, no Jake. Just an empty black and white frame, like a photo of a place that had never been occupied. Then, just as fast, the feed flickered back, and the man was at the counter, standing perfectly still, his face inches from the security camera. Jake's breath caught. He snapped his head up, expecting to see the man in front of him, but the counter was empty. Yet, on the screen, the man's eyes bore into the lens, watching, waiting. Jake's hands curled into fists. "Screw this," he muttered. He grabbed the baseball bat from under the counter and strode toward the figure on the screen. But when he turned the corner, the store was empty again. His skin prickled, cold and damp. The doors, he'd hear the chime if someone left. Right. He rushed back to the counter and checked the security footage. The feed rewound itself. Frame by frame, it flicked backward, showing the man walking in reverse through the aisles. Back, until the moment he entered the store. Except he never did. The first frame of the night, 11:30 p.m., showed an empty gas station. No customer, no movement. Jake's stomach flipped. The register beeped. A receipt curled out from the machine. Jake stared at it, hands trembling as he pulled it free. Total, your shift ends when you do. The numbers beneath the barcode blurred, flickering like static. His eyes ached trying to focus on them. He tore his gaze away, heart hammering. The clock above the register read 3:33 a.m. It had read 3:33 a.m. for the past hour. Jake exhaled sharply, rubbed his face. Okay, he said aloud, voice shaking. This is a dream, a prank, or a rustle behind him. He spun, bat raised. The store was still empty. He turned back to the register. The screen displayed a single message. Clocking out is not an option. Jake's breath came ragged. He grabbed his phone, opened the clock app. The screen read 3:33 a.m. He pulled up his contacts. The names and numbers were gone, blank. His call log, too. The only entry was from Tony's Gas and Go night shift. Duration, eternity. The phone screen flickered, distorting, and then a reflection in the dark surface of the register monitor. A man standing behind him. Not just a man. Jake. Same uniform, same name tag, same tired, bloodshot eyes. The other Jake smiled, and the lights in the store went out. The end. The first time Sam Carter heard the children, he thought it was the wind. Soft, rhythmic, just a whisper threading through the trees. Then he heard it again, clearer this time. His name. Sam. Sam. He stopped walking. The trail was barely a trail anymore, just a narrow strip of earth winding through the thickening trees. The sun had dipped too low, casting long shadows between the trunks. His GPS had died 20 minutes ago, his phone right after, leaving him stranded in a nameless stretch of forest. The whisper came again, closer, then the giggling. A group of children stood in a clearing ahead, arranged in a perfect circle, hands clasped. They swayed, whispering, their voices rising and falling in some eerie, forgotten cadence. Their clothing was old, too old. Faded dresses, patched trousers, no jackets, though the air had turned cold. Hey kids, Sam called. His voice felt small, fragile. Are you lost? The children stilled. Then, in unison, they turned toward him. They smiled, but their eyes stayed empty. A girl with hollowed-out cheeks stepped forward. She was maybe 8 or 9, with tangled blonde hair and bare feet caked in mud. You found us, she whispered. A chill tightened around Sam's ribs. Where are your parents? He asked. The children giggled, a sound like wind through dead leaves. They didn't answer. He took a step back. That's when he saw them. The footprints, hundreds of them, leading from the darkened woods behind him to the exact spot where he stood. His breath stuttered. They weren't just footprints. They were his. The deep treads of his hiking boots stamped again and again in the damp earth. His head spun. Had he been here before? No, that was impossible. You've been walking in circles, he muttered, more to himself than to them. The little girl tilted her head. No, Sam, you walked here. His stomach twisted. How do you know my name? She blinked slowly, her pupils too large in the fading light. We've always known your name. He turned to leave. Something in his gut screamed go. But the path was gone. The way he'd come, just trees now. Nothing but a wall of dark, unyielding bark. dark, stretching endlessly in every direction. The whispers started again, a low hum, building to something too loud, too full, pressing against his skull. Enough, he snapped. I'm getting out of here. He moved, forcing his feet forward, but the earth pulled at him, heavy as wet cement. Something was wrong, so wrong. The air was thick with a scent he couldn't place, something old like rotting leaves and damp wood. The blonde girl stepped closer. Remember, she whispered, her voice slipping under his skin like a needle. A flash of something, small hands, dirt under fingernails, digging. His breath hitched. No, another flash, moonlight on a shallow grave, the whisper of wind in the trees. A boy's voice, his own, murmuring, "It has to stay hidden. We can't let them find it." Sam staggered back. "No, that's not real. I've never been here before." The girl's mouth twitched in something almost like pity. "But you have," she said. The trees groaned as if something vast and ancient was shifting behind them. Sam turned and ran. His boots pounded against the earth, crushing the footprints that had led him here. His lungs burned, his legs ached, but he kept running. Laughter chased him, slipping between the trees, moving ahead of him as if the children weren't following. They were leading. A shape loomed ahead, a clearing. He skidded to a stop and saw it. A mound of earth, just large enough to be a grave. Sam's pulse thundered in his ears. His stomach lurched. No, no. His hands moved on their own, shoving away damp leaves, clawing at the dirt. He hit something soft, rotting, and bile surged up his throat. Fingers, small, pale fingers, curled just beneath the soil. Sam scrambled back, chest heaving. The forest shivered, a low rustling slithering through the leaves. The children stepped forward, their faces darkening. "You left us here," the girl said. Her voice was different now, older, deeper. Sam shook his head violently. "No, I don't know you. I never..." The children raised their hands, pale, thin, dirt-streaked. The memory hit like a hammer. A boy, a friend, a night just like this one. The fear, the guilt, the desperate whisper, "No one will ever know." Sam choked on a sob. The trees pressed closer, their twisted limbs curling like skeletal fingers. The forest was alive, and it was watching. The children moved in, surrounding him. The circle was closing. The little girl knelt beside him. Her voice was soft, patient. "This time, Sam," she whispered, "we won't let you forget." And as the night swallowed him whole, he finally remembered. The end. Nathan adjusted his tie in the elevator's mirror, inhaling deeply. The email had called this the opportunity of a lifetime, the kind of job people fought for, the kind of salary that erased debt, bought houses, and built futures. He had prepped for days, rehearsing answers in his head. The elevator doors slid open with an almost soundless efficiency, revealing the top floor of Orbis Analytics. Everything was sleek. Glass walls, silver fixtures, a floor so polished it reflected the overhead lights. The receptionist, a woman with perfectly symmetrical features, greeted him with a smile that never quite touched her eyes. "Mr. Carter," she said, "please write this way." Nathan followed her past rows of employees at their desks, all typing at an identical measured pace. No one looked up. The silence was unsettling. No phone rings, no whispered conversations, just the soft hum of computers. The interview room was minimalist. A long black table, 3 chairs on one side, one on the other. 3 interviewers sat waiting, their suits impeccable, expressions neutral. "Welcome, Nathan," they said in unison. He forced a chuckle. Practice that, did you? None of them reacted. A drop of cold sweat slid down his spine. Nathan sat, the chair beneath him firmer than expected. The three interviewers watched him with unsettling stillness, their hands folded identically on the table. The questions started normally: his background, past experience, problem-solving skills. Their voices blended seamlessly, almost mechanical in rhythm. He answered with precision, though their lack of individual personality unsettled him. No small talk, no approving nods, just blank gazes absorbing his words. Then came the final question: are you willing to commit to us fully? The words weren't hostile, they weren't even demanding. Just absolute. Nathan hesitated. The room seemed to exhale. The interviewers nodded in unison. Then, without another word, they stood and left through a side door. Nathan blinked. That was it. No handshake, no follow-up. He remained seated, waiting for someone to return. A minute passed, then another. His fingers drummed against his leg. He checked his phone. Nothing. The screen wouldn't turn on. No signal, no battery indication. Just black. Outside the window, the city skyline seemed off. The buildings had shifted somehow, subtly misaligned, like a dream slightly out of focus. A crackling voice broke the silence. Welcome to your first day. Nathan's breath caught. He turned toward the intercom speaker. The office door should have led to the hallway, but when he opened it, another identical office, the same black table, the same empty chairs, his own reflection in the window, except he looked older, tired, like he'd been here for years. Nathan stumbled backward. His reflection did the same, but with a delay, half a second too late, like a corrupted video file. The fluorescent lights above flickered, casting elongated shadows that didn't quite match his movements. His pulse pounded in his ears. "This is a prank," he muttered, forcing a weak laugh, but his voice sounded thinner, as though the air itself was absorbing it. The intercom crackled again. "Please take your seat." Nathan turned sharply. The office door was closed now, though he hadn't heard it shut. The black table, the empty chairs, waiting. The walls seemed closer than before, the ceiling lower. He could feel the weight of them, pressing down. His desk was different now. A nameplate sat atop it. Nathan Carter. The handwriting wasn't his. There was a folder beside it filled with documents, spreadsheets, emails, reports. Work he didn't remember doing, work dated months, even years back. A second chair was pulled out across from him. The cushion was sunken, worn down. Someone had been sitting there, recently. Nathan reached for the folder with trembling fingers. That was when the door opened again, and someone walked in. It was him, older, drained, eyes sunken with exhaustion. The other Nathan exhaled and muttered, "You took too long to answer." Nathan's throat tightened. His older self stood across the table, shoulders slumped, fingers twitching like a man running on fumes. This isn't real. Who are you?" The other him chuckled dryly, a sound without humor. He slumped into the chair, rubbing his temples. "I asked that too. First few weeks maybe, then months passed, then years." Nathan's skin crawled. No, this was a trick, a nightmare. He grabbed the folder on the desk, flipping through the pages. His own name signed at the bottom of every report. Emails he didn't recall writing. A sticky note fell under the table. It was crumpled, scrawled in desperate, shaky handwriting. "Don't hesitate. Say yes." Nathan looked up. His older self met his gaze with something like pity. "Every time you hesitate," the man sighed, "and every time you come back here, again and again." Nathan lunged for the door, but it no longer led to the hallway. It led back to the interview room. The three interviewers were there, waiting, Are you willing to commit to us fully? The air vibrated with expectation. Nathan's heart pounded. His mouth went dry. He could feel his older self watching, waiting. Nathan swallowed hard. The interviewers stared, their faces blank, expectant. The walls seemed closer now, the air heavier. His older self lingered in the doorway, shoulders tense. You took too long, the man muttered again. You always take too long. Nathan turned back to the interviewers. Are you willing to commit to us fully? The words rang in his skull, looping, pressing. He opened his mouth, but before he could speak, the chair beneath him felt softer. The table was smooth beneath his hands. He blinked. He was back at the beginning. Welcome, Nathan, the interviewers said in unison. The end. Miriam Clark noticed the house the moment she opened her blinds. The morning light stretched long across her quiet cul-de-sac, gilding everything in soft gold. But the house across the street, that hadn't been there before. Her breath caught. She stared, waiting for her sleepy brain to catch up, to make sense of what she was seeing. It was a house, sure, a perfectly normal two-story suburban home, painted a dull shade of gray-blue. But something about it was off. The angles were too sharp, the windows too large, the front door set a fraction of an inch too high. The whole thing had a faintly blurred quality, like an unfinished painting. And the most unsettling part, she knew for a fact it hadn't existed yesterday. She stood there, unmoving, as a family moved in. A man, a woman, a child, all perfectly normal at first. But when they walked, they moved just a little too stiffly. Their gestures felt rehearsed, imitated rather than natural. The mother's head snapped toward the child too quickly. The father's wave to the moving truck was an exaggerated, robotic arc. Miriam stepped away from the window, stomach knotting. She turned for just a second, just a single second, and when she looked back, the curtains in the house were open, and someone inside was staring directly at her. She tried not to think about the house for the rest of the day, but that night, after sunset, the doorbell rang. Miriam hesitated before answering. The street outside was silent, the new house dark, no sign of anyone. On her porch sat a small package, wrapped in crisp brown paper. No return address. She carried it inside, fingers tingling with unease. When she peeled back the wrapping, she found a framed photograph. It was her house, taken from the perspective of the new house. Her throat dried. Someone had taken a picture of her home from across the street. That alone was unsettling, but what made her skin prickle, made her breath hitch, was the detail in the window. There was someone in the house, someone standing at her window, watching. Her stomach dropped, because the woman in the photo, the one staring back at the camera, wasn't her. That night, Miriam barely slept. Every creak of her house made her flinch. She swore she heard movement from across the street, even though the house was dark, its new owners seemingly asleep. At 3:12 a.m., a flickering glow caught her eye. She turned in bed, heart thumping. Through her blinds, she could see the upstairs window of the new house was lit. A television screen, static fizzing across the glass. Then movement. A shape crossed the screen. Miriam sat up, pulse hammering. A second later, her bedside lamp flickered. Her stomach knotted. The flickering in her room was perfectly synchronized with the flickering of the television across the street. She turned her lamp off. Across the street, the glow in the window disappeared. She turned it back on. The light returned. Miriam swallowed hard. house wasn't just there, it was watching her. By morning she felt ridiculous. She dressed, determined to prove to herself that she was being paranoid. She walked across the street, knocked on the door. It opened on its own, a slow, silent swing inward. Miriam hesitated, then stepped inside. The interior was wrong. The furniture was nearly identical to hers. Same couch, same bookshelves, but the photos lining the walls weren't hers. No, they were of her. Pictures of her at the grocery store, parking her car, unlocking her front door. Her breath hitched. In every single one, her face was turned away, as if whoever took them had been waiting for her to notice. A floorboard creaked behind her. She turned. The door slammed shut. Miriam ran home. Her hands shook as she locked every door, shut every blind. When she turned on the kitchen light, her breath left her body. On the counter sat a half-empty coffee cup. Next to it a pair of men's shoes. Neither belonged to her. She grabbed the coffee cup, her pulse hammering, and noticed a single lipstick stain on the rim. Her lipstick. She checked her reflection in the window above the sink, and her stomach clenched. The lipstick she was wearing didn't match the stain on the cup. It wasn't hers, but it belonged to someone who looked exactly like her. By nightfall, Miriam knew the house wasn't just watching her, it was replacing her. When she looked out her window, she saw herself standing across the street. Not a reflection, not a trick of the light. Her, standing in the upstairs window of the new house, staring back. A slow, knowing smile spread across the copy's face. It raised a hand and waved. Behind her, in her own home, a door creaked open. The next morning, the neighborhood was the same, except now, Miriam's house sat empty. The new house across the street had its curtains drawn, quiet and still. A real estate sign was removed from the lawn. A moving truck pulled in. A new family arrived. And in the upstairs window, a woman who looked exactly like Miriam watched silently, waiting. Across the street, someone new opened their blinds, noticing the house for the first time. Their breath hitched, because the house across the street hadn't been there yesterday. The end. Lisa's fingers hovered over the block button. A final satisfying tap, and Darren was gone, erased from her life as easily as deleting a contact. She exhaled. No more late-night texts. No more I miss you messages that made her stomach churn with a sick blend of guilt and relief. For the first time in months, she felt free. But the relief didn't last. 3 days later, her phone buzzed with a notification. A message from Darren. Lisa's breath caught in her throat. That wasn't possible. She had blocked him. Got your message. Thought we weren't talking anymore. Her fingers trembled as she opened the chat. It was a response to a message she had never sent. There, in the blue bubble of her texts, were words she didn't remember typing. I miss you too. Lisa's stomach flipped. This had to be a mistake, some kind of glitch. She hadn't sent that. What the hell? She typed, pressing send before she could second-guess herself. No response. She tried calling, but the number was still blocked. Maybe it was some kind of lag, a delayed message from before she had blocked him. Or maybe she just needed to get some sleep. The next morning, Lisa woke up to another notification, a new email from herself. She sat up, heart pounding, and clicked it open. It was a reply to a conversation thread that didn't exist. Lisa, please stop. I don't want to do this anymore. You're the one who reached out first. I'm just answering. Her skin prickled with cold dread. She checked her sent messages. Nothing. She checked her recent activity. No sign of any login attempts. The email wasn't real, but it was there. Her mind scrambled for an explanation. Maybe Darren had hacked her account. Maybe he was using some kind of app to fake messages. But why? Her phone vibrated again. A new text. Darren, why are you playing games? You blocked me, remember? But you keep messaging me first. A screenshot followed, a conversation between them, full of messages she had never sent. Messages where she was the one begging to talk. She swallowed hard. Lisa deleted her accounts. Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, gone. She wiped her phone, factory reset everything. She even bought a brand new phone, a different model, a new number, a fresh start. For 2 days it worked. Then her new phone buzzed. She stared at the notification. A text from an unknown number. Her fingers hesitated before opening it. Nice try, Lisa. She dropped the phone. The screen stayed lit. Another message appeared. Blocking doesn't mean I'm gone. Her lungs squeezed tight. She turned the phone off, shoved it in a drawer, and forced herself to breathe. She wouldn't respond. She wouldn't give in. She wouldn't let him win. But that night, as she lay in bed, she felt it. The unmistakable sensation of being watched. Lisa woke up to a notification. It was a photo. Her hands trembled as she opened it. It was her, asleep. The photo was taken from the foot of her bed. Terror rooted her in place. She whipped her head around, searching the dark corners of her room, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. The windows were locked. The door was shut. No one was there. She checked her phone again. The message had disappeared. No trace of it. No proof. But she knew what she had seen. The person she blocked still read her messages, and now they were closer than ever. The end. Alex first noticed the mirror's delay on his second night in the new apartment. He had been brushing his teeth, running on autopilot, when he realized something was off. His reflection wasn't quite in sync. When he raised his toothbrush, the image followed, a beat late, like a bad video call. He frowned, swiping at the glass with his free hand, expecting grime or some weird trick of the bathroom lighting. Nothing changed. Probably just tired, he thought, spitting toothpaste into the sink. He turned off the bathroom light, climbed into bed, and forgot about it. For a while. A week later, the delay was longer. Alex waved his hand. The reflection didn't move for a full second. He laughed, nervous but fascinated, and waved again, this time slower. The image followed, still delayed but less than before. It was catching up. That thought made his stomach turn, so he ignored it. People saw weird things when they were exhausted. 3 days later, it moved first. Alex had leaned in to rinse his mouth when he saw the reflection. His reflection straighten up, drop the toothbrush into the cup, and smirk. It spat into the sink. Alex hadn't moved yet. He stood frozen, tasting mint and panic, watching his reflection go through the motions of shutting off the tap, shaking his hands dry. His stomach clenched. This wasn't lag anymore. It wasn't catching up. It was ahead of him. Then it turned off the light. And a moment later, the real Alex reached for the switch. His hand trembled as he flipped it. The mirror was black now, absorbing the dim glow from the hallway. His reflection was still there, grinning. The next morning, Alex avoided the mirror. He didn't shave, didn't linger in the bathroom. Maybe it was stress, a trick of his own mind. He was seeing things. That had to be it. But at night, when he finally went in to brush his teeth, His eyes were drawn against his will to the mirror. The reflection was gone. His stomach twisted, every instinct screaming at him to turn and run, but he couldn't. He was frozen, staring at the empty glass. Then he saw the words, scratched deep into the mirror's surface, jagged as claw marks. "Now you follow me." A door slammed shut behind him. Alex spun around, the bathroom door. His breath hitched. He grabbed the handle, locked. A chill crawled up his spine. He turned back to the mirror, his pulse hammering in his throat. The scratches in the glass were gone. But his reflection wasn't him. The face staring back wasn't mimicking him. It was watching. His chest rose and fell in sharp gasps, but the figure in the mirror only smiled. Alex lifted a shaking hand. His reflection didn't move. "What is this?" His voice cracked. The thing in the glass tilted its head, mocking his confusion. Alex tried the door again. The knob wouldn't budge. His pulse pounded in his ears. He turned back to the mirror, and his reflection moved, slowly, deliberately. It reached for the light switch. Alex flinched back. No, the figure in the glass smirked. Its hand flicked the switch. Darkness. Alex gasped. He was still standing, still in the bathroom. But the mirror, there was something in the glass. He wasn't looking at a reflection anymore. The surface was deeper. It had depth, like a tunnel, like an abyss. And in that abyss, something was moving. His breath stuttered. He stepped back, but the air behind him was solid, like he had hit an invisible wall. In the mirror, the thing, his other self, was stepping forward, closer to the glass. Alex tried to scream. He couldn't. The figure pressed its palm to the glass, and on his side, Alex felt a hand press against his own chest. Cold, wrong, like fingers wrapping around his ribs. He tried to shove it away. There was nothing there. His limbs felt distant. His head swam. The bathroom was shrinking. The figure was still smiling. Then it stepped through. The lights flickered. The mirror went back to normal. Alex stood in the dark bathroom, blinking slowly. His head felt foggy. Hadn't he been panicking a second ago? He looked at his hands. They felt lighter, more real than they had before. He turned toward the mirror. His reflection stared back, perfectly in sync. Alex smirked and turned off the light. The end. The first thing Claire noticed about Black Hollow was the silence. Not the quiet of a small town where the hum of life persisted. Lawn mowers, dogs barking, children laughing in backyards. No, this was different. This silence pressed in, thick and unnatural, like the town was holding its breath. She pulled into the main street, past old brick storefronts with peeling paint, a general store, a barber shop, a diner with a flickering neon sign. Everything looked lived in but wrong. She slowed down as she passed the town's modest church. Next to it, where a school should have been, was nothing but an overgrown lot. Claire parked near the diner and grabbed her notebook. Her editor had thought this would be a throwaway human interest piece. Quaint town opts for child-free living, but the details had gnawed at her. No schools, no playgrounds, no birth records in over 2 decades. Inside the diner, the smell of burnt coffee clung to the air. A few patrons lifted their heads as she entered, then quickly turned back. An elderly waitress approached, her name tag smudged. "You're not from around here." "No," Claire admitted, forcing a smile. "Just passing through." "Actually, I was wondering." She hesitated. "Why aren't there any children in town?" The woman's expression didn't change. "We never had kids," she said flatly. From the corner booth, a man scoffed. "That's not true," he muttered. "They left. All of them." Claire gripped her pen. Someone was lying. Claire sat across from the man who had spoken. Late 50s, a trucker's build, his hands thick with calluses. His coffee sat untouched. "They left?" she asked, keeping her voice casual. The man flicked his gaze toward the waitress, who was watching too closely. His jaw tensed. "That's what they say." "Who's they?" He shook his head. "Doesn't matter. You won't find anything." But someone wanted her to. That evening, as she wandered the town, she found the library, a squat brick building with a dusty, closed sign hanging lopsided on the door. It was unlocked. Inside, a single desk lamp glowed in the gloom. Behind it sat a frail-looking librarian, her skin paper-thin, her expression unreadable. She barely reacted when Claire approached. "You're looking for the evacuation order," the woman murmured as if reading her thoughts. Claire hesitated. "What?" The librarian reached under the desk and pulled out a yellowed newspaper, carefully folded. She slid it forward. The headline chilled her. "Town-wide evacuation order. Necessary adjustments to be made. No date, no explanation." Claire swallowed. "What does this mean?" The librarian held her gaze. "You should leave before dark." Claire shoved the paper into her bag and turned to go. But as she stepped outside, the streetlights flickered. The town was empty, yet something about the stillness felt different now, like something was waiting. Claire woke to a strange sound like distant giggling. She sat up in bed, heart hammering. The motel room was dark, the air thick with the scent of dust, and something faintly sweet, like old candy left too long in a drawer. She reached for her bag, fingers fumbling for the newspaper. It was gone. She yanked the bag open, searching every pocket. Nothing. A cold dread spread through her. She knew she hadn't left it anywhere. Someone had taken it. She dressed quickly and rushed back to the library. The closed sign still dangled on the door. She knocked, then pounded. No answer. She peered through the glass. The desk lamp was gone. So was the librarian. Inside the diner, the same elderly waitress greeted her with a tight smile. "Can I help you?" Claire swallowed hard. "The librarian, where is she?" The woman blinked, confused. "What librarian?" "The one from last night. She gave me an old newspaper about..." The waitress shook her head. "We don't have a librarian, dear, haven't in years." Claire backed away, her pulse in her throat. Something was very, very wrong. That night, Claire double-checked the motel door, locking it twice. She kept the lamp on, notebook open, trying to piece things together. The newspaper was gone. The librarian never existed. No one in town remembered, or they pretended not to. A noise outside made her freeze, a soft tap, tap, tap against the window. Her breath hitched. Slowly she turned her head. Tiny handprints covered the glass, dozens of them. The blood drained from her face. The laughter came again, high, breathless, whispering on the wind. The doorknob rattled, a slow, testing movement. Claire grabbed her phone, but the screen flickered. The battery inexplicably drained. The giggling swelled. A child's voice whispered just outside the door. "We remember you." Claire stumbled back, heart pounding. The light bulb overhead popped. The room plunged into darkness. Something small and cold brushed against her arm. She screamed. Claire's scream died in her throat as the darkness thickened, pressing in like cold hands. The whispers swarmed her, overlapping, dozens of tiny voices. "You forgot us, you left, but we remember." A sudden weight pulled at her, small fingers gripping her wrists, her ankles. The motel room was gone. The town was gone. Claire opened her mouth to beg, but her voice had vanished. Outside, black hollow remained silent, the town without children. But inside the dark, they laughed, and this time they wouldn't be forgotten. The end. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, their sterile glow washing over rows of empty cubicles. Mark Reynolds sat at his desk, eyes bleary, the last remnants of coffee growing cold in his mug. He exhaled sharply, pushing away from his monitor. The numbers on his screen blurred together, columns of spreadsheets overlapping in a dizzying haze. 3:28 a.m. It was time to leave. As he gathered his things and made his way toward the elevators, something made him stop. At the end of the hallway, a door stood where there shouldn't be one. Unmarked, locked, a heavy, matte black surface. Mark frowned. He'd been working here for nearly 6 years, staying late countless nights. This hallway had always ended in a blank wall. He was sure of it. He hesitated, debating whether to touch the handle. A strange unease settled in his stomach, a feeling that something behind the door was waiting. A cough from behind startled him. The overnight security guard strolled past, checking his clipboard. Mark gestured toward the door. "Hey, what's this? Some kind of maintenance room?" The guard barely glanced up. "What room?" Mark turned back to the hallway. The door was gone. Mark didn't sleep well. His dreams were jagged, filled with flickering lights and empty desks. He woke with the certainty that something was off. Still, he chalked it up to exhaustion and returned to work, determined to prove to himself that he wasn't imagining things. And yet 3:33 a.m., the door was back. A dull vibration buzzed in his pocket. He pulled out his phone, expecting a message from a coworker, but there was no sender, just a notification on his screen. "Go inside." Mark shivered. The air in the office felt too still. He turned toward the glass window overlooking the city. His reflection nodded. His breath hitched. No, that was wrong. He hadn't moved, and yet his reflection had. Mark backed away. His pulse thundered in his ears. Something was playing with him. He left without looking back. "Are you sure there was a door?" The security guard's expression was unreadable. Mark clenched his jaw. "Yes, I'm sure. It was right there. I saw it 2 nights in a row." The guard exhaled, shaking his head. "Sir, I've worked here 15 years. No such door exists." Mark felt his patience slipping. "Then why do I keep seeing it?" The guard scratched his chin. "Look, maybe you should get some rest. Sometimes when people work late, they start seeing things." Mark left the conversation unsettled, but that night he decided to test reality. He snapped a picture of the door, checked his phone. The photo was there, solid proof. But when he looked again an hour later, the image was gone, and at 3:33 a.m. his phone buzzed again. "Go inside." Mark's hands clenched into fists. His own reflection was grinning at him. Mark tried leaving early. He stood in the elevator, pressing the lobby button repeatedly. But the moment the doors began to close, he noticed something. His reflection in the elevator's metallic surface. It shook its head. Mark's stomach turned to ice. His reflection wasn't matching his movements. Panic coiled around his ribs. The moment the doors opened, he stepped out again, back into the office. The hallway stretched before him. The door was waiting. Mark's breath turned shallow. His feet moved forward despite himself. From the other side of the door, something whispered his name. Mark. Mark was coming undone. He checked his email history, the one he had sent to his coworker asking about the door. It was gone. Every sent message, every reply, erased. Even worse, his inbox was empty, as if he had never communicated with anyone in this company. He reached out to a colleague in person. "Hey, you got my message, right? About the weird door?" His coworker furrowed his brow. "Who are you?" Mark let out a nervous laugh. "Very funny." The man's expression remained blank. "Are you new here?" Something deep inside Mark cracked. He rushed to the mirror in the break room. His hands trembled as he stared at his reflection. For the first time he noticed his reflection's eyes weren't blinking. At 3:33 a.m., his phone buzzed. "It's time." Mark stood in front of the door. He wasn't sure how he got here. He had no memory of walking to this hallway, no memory of making a choice. The door was wide open now. A black staircase spiraled downward, swallowed in darkness. His hands trembled. He knew whatever was waiting below had been waiting for him all along. Then a voice from the bottom of the stairs. It was his own. "Mark, hurry." A deep terror gripped his spine. His feet moved forward on their own, and then the door swung shut. The next day the office was unchanged. Workers arrived, emails were sent, people laughed over coffee, but Mark Reynolds' desk was empty. No one spoke of him. No one asked where he had gone. His name was gone from the employee records. His emails had never existed. And that night at 3:33 a.m., a new employee stayed late. At the end of the hallway, a locked door appeared and his phone buzzed with a message. "Go inside. The end." Mark and Jenna stepped through the front door, the soft creak of the hinges blending with the steady hum of the baby monitor. A night out had been rare, necessary even, but the guilt still sat in Jenna's chest like a stone. She glanced at the baby monitor in her hand, the screen casting a faint glow. Their daughter, Lily, was curled under her unicorn blanket, her tiny chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. The babysitter must have put her to bed right on time. Mark sighed contentedly, stretching as he kicked off his shoes. "Best steak I've had in years, and we finally got a real date night." He smirked at her. "Guess we should tip the sitter a little extra." Jenna smiled as she pulled out her phone, opening the babysitting app to send the payment. She tapped through the screens, frowning as she scrolled. There was no record of the booking. Her stomach sank. She checked again, then a third time, clicking through past messages, upcoming appointments, nothing. No history of hiring anyone tonight. Mark raised an eyebrow. "What's wrong?" Jenna swallowed hard. "The sitter. She's not in the app." Mark walked over, peering at the screen. "What do you mean? We booked her this morning." "I know." Jenna's voice wavered. "But there's no record, no messages, no transaction." Mark frowned and pulled out his own phone. "Let me check my email. Maybe the receipt got sent to me instead." His fingers moved across the screen, then stilled. Nothing. No confirmation. A creeping unease crawled up Jenna's spine. "That doesn't make sense," she murmured. "I saw her on the monitor during dinner." Mark glanced toward the hallway, his voice lowering. "Are you sure?" Jenna nodded, feeling cold. She was sitting right there on the couch. They exchanged a look. Then Mark walked over to the coffee table and picked up the baby monitor, rewinding the footage to earlier that evening. The screen flickered, displaying their dimly lit living room. The couch sat empty. Mark scrubbed through the video. The timestamp continued rolling forward, but no one appeared. Jenna felt her heart hammer. "That's not right." Mark was already moving toward the kitchen counter, opening the home security app. He scrolled back through the evening's footage, his fingers moving fast, a quiet urgency in the way his breathing hitched. Jenna hovered beside him, watching. The front door remained closed all night. No one had entered. No one had left. Her voice felt distant, detached. Then who put Lily to bed? Mark didn't answer. His finger hovered over the screen as the footage changed to Lily's nursery. The dim glow of a nightlight bathed the room in soft blue. The rocking chair sat empty beside the crib. Then, movement. A shadow shifted. Someone was in the room. A woman. She was seated beside Lily's bed, head slightly tilted, a hand resting gently against the crib bars. Jenna's breath caught. Oh my God. Mark tried to zoom in, but the image remained blurry. The woman's face indistinct, smudged, almost as if the camera couldn't quite capture her. Who the hell is that? Mark whispered. Jenna couldn't speak. The figure never moved from her spot, never turned toward the camera, just sat there watching over their daughter. The footage ticked forward. At exactly 9:42 p.m., the woman stood up and walked out of the frame. Jenna and Mark ran to Lily's room. They burst through the door, their breath ragged, eyes scanning every corner of the space. Nothing. Lily stirred in her bed, rubbing her eyes sleepily. Jenna rushed to her side, voice tight. Baby, are you okay? Lily blinked up at her, drowsy and confused. She said she'll be back when you forget again, Lily mumbled. A shiver skated down Jenna's spine. Mark knelt beside the bed. Who, sweetie? Lily's tiny fingers curled into her blanket. The babysitter. Jenna clutched Mark's arm, a silent plea passing between them. They didn't sleep that night. They sat in the living room, the baby monitor between them, the security footage still replaying on Mark's phone. It didn't make sense. They debated calling the police, but what would they even say? A stranger came into our home, put our child to bed, and then left without a trace. They tried rationalizing. Maybe they had hired someone and somehow forgotten. Maybe there had been a mix-up with the app. But none of it explained the footage. None of it explained Lily's words. At 3 a.m., Jenna rose from the couch, her throat dry. She walked to the kitchen for a glass of water. Then she froze. A note was pinned to the fridge beneath a magnet. Unfamiliar handwriting. Black ink bleeding into the paper. You're welcome. See you soon. Jenna's breath hitched. Her pulse pounded against her ribs as she took a step back. Mark, she whispered hoarsely. Footsteps pounded the floor as he rushed in. What? She pointed at the note, unable to speak. Mark read it, his face draining of color. Then in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, Jenna, our anniversary isn't until next week. The end. Daniel Mercer first noticed something was wrong the day David disappeared. Not just from work, not just from the office. David was gone. His desk was missing. No, not empty. Missing. As if it had never existed. His name wasn't in the firm's directory. His emails were wiped. When Daniel asked HR, the woman at the desk blinked twice, tilted her head and smiled like he was a child asking where the moon went during the day. There's no David in this office, Mr. Mercer. But he was sitting right next to me yesterday. Are you sure about that? Her voice was light, unconcerned. A paper-thin corporate pleasantry over something much darker. That night, Daniel checked the company website. No David, not even an archived employee record. His LinkedIn profile, deleted. His phone number, not in service, vanished. And yet the strangest part was the lack of reaction. No one asked where David had gone. No one brought up his name. like they had forgotten he existed. The next morning, Daniel approached Kara from accounting. "Hey, do you remember David from the 6th floor?" "David?" She frowned. "Who's that?" He stared at her, heart thudding. Tall guy, always wore that ridiculous navy blue tie with the tiny giraffes on it. She shook her head, looking at him with mild concern. "Are you feeling okay, Daniel?" At Blackwell and Chase LLP, no one ever quit. It was a running joke among the associates. The firm had zero turnover, no resignations, no firings, promotions, yes, but never departures. Now Daniel was starting to understand why. That afternoon, he tried something desperate. He logged into the company's internal portal and searched for every former employee in the last 10 years. No results found. The database only listed current staff. No transfers, no past associates, like no one had ever left. His stomach twisted. He opened his own profile. Daniel Mercer, hired 2018, current employee. He exhaled, relieved. At least I still exist. But when he refreshed the page, his breath hitched. Hired, never. The room swayed. His mouth went dry. He slammed his laptop shut. That night, he got the email. It came from no sender, just a blank address, no subject line, no body, just a single attachment. "Read me if you want to live." Text. His pulse hammered as he clicked it open. "If you read this, you're already gone. They erased me. They will erase you. HR won't let you quit. The exits don't work. Your keycard will stop working soon. Your name will disappear. Your desk will be next. Don't let the lights flicker. That's when they rewrite you." The message ended abruptly. No signature. No trace of who sent it. His phone buzzed. An unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. A ragged voice whispered, "Get out, now." Then the line went dead. The next morning, Daniel arrived at work to find his keycard disabled. The security guard, a burly man in an ill-fitting suit, watched him with empty, unblinking eyes. "I work here," Daniel said, forcing a smile. The guard's head tilted just slightly. "Do you?" His stomach clenched. "Check the employee list." The guard typed something on his tablet. The seconds stretched. Then he looked up. "There's no Daniel Mercer in our system." Daniel laughed nervously. "That's ridiculous. I've been here since..." His voice died in his throat. "Since when?" His mind blurred, like a page of text smeared by rain. He tried to remember his first day at the firm, but the memory was hazy, incomplete. A door opened behind him. A woman from HR stepped out, her smile stretched too wide. "Daniel, you're making a scene." He took a step back. "I need to leave." "You can't. Watch me." He turned to the glass exit doors, but there was no street outside, no city, no world beyond the firm, just an endless gray void. Desperation clawed at him. He ran, past cubicles, past meeting rooms filled with employees who wouldn't look at him. Then his desk, gone, not empty, not reassigned, gone. The carpet beneath was untouched, like it had never been there at all. A cold chill slid down his spine. His hands shook. A chat notification popped up on his screen. "No sender. You don't belong here anymore." The lights flickered. A wave of nausea hit him as the office shifted, like a puzzle piece snapping into a different place. The exit sign was gone. So was Kara from accounting. Her desk sat in the same place, but the nameplate was blank. Another flicker. The air felt wrong, too thin, too sharp. The office walls shimmered like a mirage. He looked down at his hands. They were fading. Daniel sprinted toward HR's office. The receptionist barely reacted as he shoved past her. Inside, a dozen identical HR reps sat in identical white chairs, smiling in unison. "I want to quit," he screamed. They all cocked their heads at the same time. "No one quits, Daniel." His breath hitched, his skin tingled as another flicker hit. We take care of our employees. Another flicker. We keep the firm running smoothly. Flicker. You were never here. The office vanished. No walls, no desks, no city, just gray nothingness. Daniel opened his mouth to scream, but there was no one left to scream. No Daniel Mercer, just a blank desk where he used to sit, and a new employee arriving for their first day at Blackwell and Chase LLP. The end. Nina hadn't slept in 3 days. She sat in the dim glow of the nursery nightlight, rocking slowly, arms cradling her son, Theo. He was perfect, or at least that's what everyone said. A full head of soft brown hair, tiny, delicate hands, a gaze so intense that it made her uneasy. She had read somewhere that newborns don't focus well, that their eyes wander, that their expressions are unformed. But Theo stared. Nina tried to shake it off, blaming her exhaustion. Babies were strange, newborns even stranger. Maybe she was the one acting odd, feeling so detached, so hollow, like a ghost walking through her own life. "Hey, little man," she whispered, brushing her thumb over his tiny cheek. His skin was warm, soft, alive, yet he didn't react, didn't coo, didn't blink. Her chest tightened. Had she seen him blink before? Maybe she had and just never noticed, right? The baby's gaze stayed locked onto hers, too steady, too focused. A single thought drifted into her mind, unshakable, like a whisper from the dark. "He's watching me." The next few days blurred into a sleepless haze. Nina kept waiting to catch Theo blinking once, just once, but she never did. She told herself she was imagining things. Newborns blink less, she had read that somewhere. But the longer she watched, the more certain she became. He didn't blink, he didn't cry, he didn't laugh, he just stared. At night, Nina would wake up to find him already awake, lying in the crib, eyes wide open in the dark. Watching, always watching, her stomach twisted with unease. But the doctor dismissed her concerns. New mothers worry about everything, Dr. Langdon said, offering her a tired smile. "He's perfectly healthy." But healthy babies cried. Healthy babies reacted when their mothers touched them. Theo did neither. That night, as Nina sat up in bed, she checked the baby monitor. The screen flickered to life, casting eerie shadows across the room. Theo lay still in his crib, facing the camera. Then he sat up. The movement was too smooth, too deliberate for a newborn. He didn't wobble, didn't struggle, just sat up in one perfect motion, his blank eyes locking onto the camera. Nina's breath caught in her throat. Newborns couldn't do that. The baby monitor let out a soft, static hiss. Then, from the speaker, she heard a whisper. Her own voice, "Shh, go back to sleep." Nina never said that. Nina's hands trembled as she stared at the baby monitor. The screen flickered again, static crackling in the speakers. In the crib, Theo sat perfectly still, his unblinking gaze piercing through the camera lens. A cold sweat broke over her skin. "This isn't real," she whispered. She forced herself out of bed, heart hammering against her ribs. "Just check the crib. Just check." The nursery was silent, thick with a terrible stillness. Her bare feet pressed against the cold wooden floor as she stepped forward. The crib was full of shadows, a cradle of darkness. Theo lay on his back, motionless, not sitting, exactly where she had left him. Her breath hitched. She glanced back at the monitor in her hand. The screen still showed him sitting up, watching, but in real life, he wasn't. Nina's stomach twisted into knots. Her grip tightened around the baby monitor as the static flared, loud and shrill. Then, the screen glitched. For a fraction of a second, she saw something else, her own reflection in the camera feed. But she wasn't standing by the crib. She was standing in the hallway, watching herself. Nina's breath came in shallow gasps. The baby monitor shook in her hands, the screen flickering between Theo's sitting form and his still sleeping body, and her own reflection, standing in the hallway, watching. No. She turned her head slowly toward the nursery door, half expecting to see herself standing there. Nothing, just darkness. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears as she turned back to the crib. Theo was gone. Her stomach dropped. The blankets lay undisturbed, the crib rails locked in place. There was no way he could have climbed out. A cold mechanical whisper crackled through the baby monitor. Shh. Go back to sleep. A shadow moved in the reflection of the empty crib. Not in the room, just in the screen. Her own face staring back at her, except it wasn't her. The reflection didn't move when she did. It only watched. The voice on the monitor spoke again, her voice but softer this time. You're so tired, Nina. The air in the room turned heavy, pressing down on her chest. Her legs wobbled. Her eyelids burned. Maybe she just needed sleep. Maybe she just needed to close her eyes. Just for a second. Nina didn't remember lying down, but suddenly she was in bed. The baby monitor sat on the nightstand, screen black. The room was silent. For a moment she thought it had all been a dream, a fevered hallucination from exhaustion. Then, a faint creak. Her body stiffened. The sound came from the nursery, from the crib. She turned her head toward the monitor, pulse pounding. With trembling fingers, she pressed the power button. The screen flickered back to life. The crib was full again. Theo lay perfectly still, just like before. But now, something else was there too. A second shape, a figure standing beside the crib, half hidden in shadow. Nina's own silhouette. The baby monitor crackled. Shh, go back to screen. Her reflection blinked. The end. Nathan Grayson pulled off Highway 46, rolling into the gas station at Hidden Oaks. The sky was a dull slate, the horizon featureless, except for a cluster of motionless buildings huddled against the road. His fuel gauge blinked red, and his phone showed no signal. The gas station was empty. No attendant, no cashier. The pump still worked, though, as if expecting him. The moment he put the nozzle back, a bell jingled behind him. A man in a grease-stained uniform stood by the station door, grinning too wide. Need a place to stay? Nathan hesitated. I was just passing through. The man's smile didn't waver. Storm's coming. Best not to drive at night. Nathan glanced at the sky. No clouds, no wind, no sound. But something about the man's gaze made refusal feel impossible. The motel was at the edge of town. A squat, lifeless building with a single neon vacancy sign pulsing erratically. The clerk behind the desk was a woman with blank eyes who handed him a key without checking a ledger. His room smelled of old paper. The walls were off-white, but in the wrong way, as if they'd never been another color. The TV was on, broadcasting a frozen image of static. When he turned it off, the screen remained lit, the shadows shifting slightly. Sleep came reluctantly, then came the knocking. A slow, deliberate tap, tap, tap against the window. Nathan sat up. The room clock showed no time. The knocking came again, but when he yanked the curtain, nothing. Just the empty lot stretching into the dark. The next morning Nathan packed up and left. The town was eerily still, as if waiting. He took the only road leading out. 30 minutes later, he passed a familiar sign. Welcome to Hidden Oaks. His stomach twisted. He checked his phone. Still no signal. GPS refused to load. He turned around, driving the opposite way. 40 minutes later, the same sign. Panic itched at the edges of his mind. He stopped at the gas station. The attendant was still there, standing exactly as before. How do I get out of here? Nathan demanded. The man chuckled as if Nathan had asked the wrong question. Oh, you're already where you need to be. Nathan's breath turned shallow. I don't belong here. The man wiped his hands on a rag that never seemed to get dirty. Funny thing about Hidden Oaks, he said, voice light. Folks always think they're just passing through. Nathan left before he could hear the rest. Nathan began noticing things. The people never moved. They existed in loops. The same woman always stepped out of the bakery, always adjusted her scarf, always turned to go back inside. Houses with no doors. Some had stairs that led nowhere. Others had windows that reflected nothing. The same car at every intersection. He followed it once, only to find it parked in front of the diner when he arrived. At the motel, he checked the guest book. Only one name was written, his own. Outside, the sky dimmed. Then, from somewhere deep in the town, a siren blared. Nathan sprinted outside. The streets were empty. Every door had shut. Every window was covered. Something moved down the road. Not walking, rearranging. Nathan ducked behind a dead car. From his hiding spot, he saw street signs flicker and change. Buildings shifted when he wasn't looking. A bus stop appeared where there hadn't been one before. The sign above it read, "Turn back. There is no way out." Nathan found a newspaper in a gutter. The pages were blank. He turned to the classified section. One ad was half written, the words forming as he read. Nathan Grayson, stop fighting. Stay in Hidden Oaks, it's easier. His stomach lurched. Another siren's wail. His motel door was nowhere to be found. The diner was missing. The road signs had changed again. This time they only said one thing. Forget. Nathan ran. He ran through streets that weren't there yesterday. His breath came ragged as he turned a corner, straight into the gas station. The attendant was waiting. The same smile, the same rag in his hands. Nathan froze. You can't leave, the man said. That's not how this works. Nathan's mind fractured. What is this place? The man shrugged. Think of it as a draft. Nathan blinked. The man gestured to the empty town, a place that wasn't finished, a model, a limbo. His smile widened. But you belong now. We all do eventually. Nathan shook his head violently. No. The man's eyes darkened. Then why are you still here? Nathan turned, ready to bolt, and saw the Welcome to Hidden Oaks sign. A new line had appeared beneath it. Population. One Nathan woke up in the motel. His head pounded. His hands shook. Had he dreamt it? Outside, the town looked the same, a little too same. At the diner, the waitress waved. Back again, he felt a sick wave of déjà vu. Then a car pulled in. A man stepped out, stretching, looking at the road map in confusion. Nathan knew that expression. It was the same one he had worn. And then the sirens blared. The end. The call came just after midnight. Marie had been half asleep, curled under the weight of an exhausted body and an overworked mind, when the ringtone jolted her awake. It wasn't a number she recognized, just a blank, anonymous sequence of digits. But something in her gut twisted at the sight of it. She hesitated, thumb hovering over decline, but then her body betrayed her, answering the call before she could think better of it. For a moment, Only silence. Then a whisper, "Don't let them in." The line went dead. Marie sat up in bed, her breath tight. She pulled the phone away from her ear and looked at the call log. The number sent a chill straight to her core. It was hers, her own number. A mistake, she told herself. A glitch. She set the phone down and tried to breathe past the tightness in her chest. Maybe a spoof number. Maybe she had imagined it, sleep fogging her mind. But sleep didn't return that night. By morning, she had convinced herself that it had been nothing. Just stress, an overactive imagination, or a scammer with a twisted sense of humor. She drank her coffee, pushed the thought aside, and tried to go about her day. Then, at 3:15 p.m., the knock came. 3 sharp raps at the door. Marie stiffened. The twisting in her stomach returned. She approached slowly, peeking through the peephole. 2 police officers stood outside, a man and a woman, both in uniform. The man was tall, his frame too stiff, his posture too precise. The woman had a tight-lipped smile that never quite reached her eyes. Marie hesitated, her fingers gripping the edge of the door. "Miss Jacobs." The man's voice was calm, measured, too measured. "Yes." "We received a report of a break-in at this address. We need to ask you a few questions." A break-in? She hadn't called the police. She hadn't reported anything. Marie's fingers trembled over the doorknob. "Don't let them in." The whisper from the call resurfaced in her mind, and suddenly, every nerve in her body screamed at her to listen. I didn't report anything," she said, her voice barely steady. The 2 officers exchanged glances. Not confusion, not concern, something rehearsed. The woman smiled wider. "A neighbor may have called it in. We just need to check inside, make sure everything's all right." The words were perfectly placed, smooth, polished, but there was something hollow beneath them, something scripted. Marie's grip on the door tightened. "I appreciate it," she said, "but I'm fine." There was no break-in. A beat of silence. Then the man sighed as if this were an inconvenience, as if she were an inconvenience. "If you could just open the door, ma'am," he said. "We need to verify for your safety." No, every part of her was screaming now. "Don't let them in." Marie took a slow step back. "If I didn't call, I don't think you have a reason to be here." The woman's smile didn't falter, but her eyes darkened. "Are you sure?" Marie's heart pounded. She took another step back, her hands clenched into fists. "I'd like you to leave now." Another pause. Then the man sighed again and nodded. The woman's smile flickered, just for a second before returning to her face like a mask snapping back into place. "If you need anything," the man said, "don't hesitate to call." Marie didn't move until they were gone. She stood there, her breath shaking, her body rigid with tension. Then slowly she turned back to her phone. She opened the call log. A new voicemail. Hands trembling, she pressed play. Her own voice, panicked, frantic. "You did the right thing." Marie's breath caught in her throat. "But they'll come back." The whisper of static crackled in the background. A shuffling sound, a distant rhythmic pounding. A knock. Next time, a pause, a breath. "They won't knock." The voicemail ended. Marie stared at the phone, her pulse hammering. The air in her apartment felt too thick, too heavy. She could hear her own blood rushing in her ears. And then, from the front door, a noise, not a knock, something scraping. The handle jiggled. Marie backed away. Her phone nearly slipped from her fingers as she stared at the door, watching the knob tremble against the lock. Her future self had warned her, she had listened, but had it been enough? The noise outside grew louder. She held her breath and waited. The end. to the smell of coffee and the warmth of a body curled beside him. "Morning, honey," the woman murmured, pressing a soft kiss to his temple. His heart pounded. He didn't know her. She moved to get up, stretching in a way that told him this was routine. She belonged here, but he didn't. Greg sat up, scanning the unfamiliar room. The walls were a deep green. Framed wedding photos adorned the nightstand. His face stared back at him, smiling beside hers. His fingers traced the gold band on his left hand. He wasn't married. His pulse thundered. His phone sat on the nightstand. He grabbed it, scrolling through the photos, hundreds of them. Vacations, birthday parties, anniversaries, he and her. But he didn't recognize a single one. He checked his contacts. Mom, Dad, work. The numbers were right, but something felt off. He dialed his mother's number. A man's voice answered. "Hey son, everything okay?" Greg hung up. The office should have been safe. Familiar. It wasn't. His nameplate read Greg Harmon, but he was Greg Harmon. The difference was small, but like a paper cut, it burned the more he looked at it. His office was on the wrong floor. The break room smelled different, like a detergent he'd never noticed before. Coworkers greeted him with practiced ease. "Hey Greg, you hear about the Johnson account?" Yeah, he played along, his throat dry. His emails were filled with projects he didn't remember starting. His signature at the bottom of each message was unmistakably his own. When he got home, his wife was waiting with a kiss, and it took everything in him not to flinch. That night, he tried to drive out of town. The highway never came. The roads looped, leading back to his house. The train station was empty, the schedule screen flickering delayed across every route. Something was keeping him here. Greg woke gasping. A note was tucked into the mirror frame in his own handwriting. "You agreed to this. Stop fighting it." He ripped it down, hands shaking. At breakfast, he watched her. The way she moved, the way she poured his coffee just right, like she had done it 1,000 times. "Did you sleep okay?" she asked, smiling. He forced himself to nod. At work, he checked his phone. Something was missing. A photo, one of the last he had from his old life, was gone. Had he deleted it? No, he wouldn't have. "You're staring a lot today, Greg." He turned. His coworker Anna stood by his desk, smiling, but something in her eyes. "Just tired," he said. She nodded, but her smile didn't waver. "It gets easier." The third night, he woke to find his wife sitting up beside him, staring at him. She wasn't blinking. "Almost there," she whispered. He locked himself in the bathroom. His face in the mirror was the same, but off. His hair was just slightly darker. His eyes held a warmth they never had before. "Almost where?" he muttered. No answer. The next morning, the mirror note was gone. At work, his email signature now read Greg Harmon, no D. It hadn't yesterday. He searched his phone. More photos missing. His real past erased. He checked the company directory. There was no Greg Harmon. A cold sweat broke over his skin. "You're getting there," Anna said from behind him. Greg spun. She gave a small, knowing smile. "You'll stop looking soon." That night, Greg found a contract in his desk. His name at the bottom. His real name, his signature. It was dated 6 months ago. The text blurred as he read, "This life is yours. The past will fade. The transition will be gentle. Do not resist." Greg staggered back. He never signed this. Did he? His mind felt soft, moldable. He couldn't remember his old life as clearly anymore. His mother's face was a blur. His apartment, what color were the walls? He rushed to his car, gripping the wheel, his breath coming fast. He drove. The streets were empty, no cars, no lights. He passed the same street corner twice, then 3 times. And then, his house. Again, his watching. "You can't leave," she said softly. Greg's breath hitched. "I never agreed to this." Her head tilted. "Are you sure?" She stepped aside, revealing the note from the mirror tucked into her pocket. His knees went weak. Greg woke the next morning, his body humming with a strange warmth. The bedroom was familiar now. The coffee smelled perfect. His wife kissed him, and he kissed back instinctively. His phone chimed. Memory sync complete. He checked his photos. The ones that had been missing were back, but different now. Edited. The man in them looked like him. Smiled like him. But it wasn't him. Greg stared at his reflection. His eyes were softer. His face belonged. He exhaled a slow, steady breath. His wife called from the kitchen. "Breakfast, honey?" He smiled. "Of course." And it tasted just the way he liked it. The end. The envelope arrived without a return address. Elise almost threw it away with the junk mail, but something about it felt deliberate. The paper was thick, textured like old parchment. When she opened it, the ink shimmered, as if freshly written. "You are invited to a once-in-a-lifetime concert. No recording devices allowed. No talking. Just listen." There was no date, only a time, 11:13 p.m. The location was unfamiliar, a part of the city Elise had never been to. A quick search online turned up nothing. No venue by that name. No reviews. She should have ignored it. But curiosity scratched at the back of her mind. What kind of concert forbids talking? And why her? That night she took the subway, the invitation folded tight in her palm. The deeper she traveled into the city, the fewer people remained in the train cars. By the time she reached her stop, the station was empty. Outside, streetlights hummed dimly over a narrow alley. A single, unmarked door waited at the end, slightly ajar. A faint pressure built in her ears, like the moment before a song begins. Elise stepped inside. The hallway smelled of dust and something faintly metallic, like old piano strings left to rust. Elise followed the path, her footsteps swallowed by thick, velvety silence. Then she emerged into the concert hall. It was massive, larger than any venue she'd ever seen, yet no part of the city had ever mentioned a place like this. The ceiling arched high, disappearing into darkness. Rows upon rows of people sat in perfect stillness, eyes locked on the empty stage. No murmurs, no shuffling, no whispers of anticipation, just silence. A faint pressure built in her skull like standing too close to a speaker before the first note drops. Elise hesitated. The seats stretched endlessly, yet there was no usher, no ticket check. And yet, as if guided by some unseen force, she found herself walking forward, weaving through the seated crowd until she reached an empty seat. It had a small, engraved plaque on the armrest, her name. Elise swallowed hard and sat down. A spotlight flickered on, illuminating the vacant stage. The concert had begun. There was no orchestra, no instruments, no music, and yet the audience reacted. A woman in the front row began weeping uncontrollably, clutching her chest like she'd been struck by something invisible. A man beside her covered his ears, his mouth stretched wide in a silent scream. Others sat frozen, trembling, their eyes unfocused with horror, awe, or agony. Elise heard nothing, but the pressure behind her ears began to grow. The silence became unbearable. Elise pressed her hands over her ears, expecting what? A hidden frequency, a whispered note. But there was nothing, only that mounting pressure sinking deeper into her skull. The audience continued to react. A man 2 rows ahead sat rigid, his lips trembling like he was mouthing something. but no sound came. Another person curled forward, fingers digging into their scalp. Some shook, some swayed. A few sat perfectly still, eyes glassy, as if they had already disappeared. Her breath came faster. This wasn't right. She stood up. A woman next to her reached out, grabbing Elise's wrist with ice-cold fingers. Her eyes were wide, pleading. Her mouth opened, and yet no words came. Elise yanked away. She needed to leave. She turned, scanning the crowd. No one else moved, except the ones who had begun to vanish. A man near the aisle flickered, his outlines stuttering like a glitching screen before he was simply gone. The empty seat beside him gaped like a missing note in a melody. Her stomach lurched. She rushed toward the exit, her breath tight in her throat. The doors wouldn't budge. A shudder ran through the room. The audience straightened as if responding to an unseen cue. Above the stage, the screen flickered. You are part of the music now. The lights went out. A low, resonant hum filled the space, growing, swelling, rising from the audience's throats, and Elise felt it inside her own chest. Elise clamped a hand over her mouth to keep from screaming. The hum vibrated through the seats, through the floor, through her bones. It wasn't coming from speakers. It was coming from them. She turned, desperate, clawing at the door. No handle, no keyhole, no way out. The hum deepened. Some people still wept silently. Others swayed in eerie unison. More seats sat empty, their occupants erased. Elise felt it pulling at her, a warmth in her throat, a tingling at the edges of her skin. She wasn't just hearing the sound, she was becoming it. She fought it, pressed her fingers to her lips, clenched her teeth. I won't, I won't, I won't. The screen flickered again. You are part of the music now. The words burned into her mind. Her body ached to open her mouth to join the harmony. And then, the last person disappeared. Only she remained. A lone note in an empty hall. The hum crawled inside her, pushing, begging to be released. Her lips parted, and Elise sang. The lights went out. The next morning, the concert hall was gone. No building, no address, no trace of Elise. But somewhere deep within the city, invitations began appearing in mailboxes. Thick parchment, shimmering ink. You are invited to a once-in-a-lifetime concert. At a quiet subway station, a young man unfolded his letter, curiosity flickering across his face. Far beneath the city, in the spaces where no maps reach, a melody swelled, soft, distant, and endless. Elise's voice was among them now, and the music never stopped. The end. Jacob Vance first noticed something was wrong with the house when he measured the walls. It was a fixer-upper, sure. Peeling wallpaper, creaky floors, a basement that smelled like wet stone. But it had good bones. That's what the real estate agent had said, at least. The last owner had passed away under unusual circumstances. No further details were provided. Jacob didn't care. He needed a new beginning. But when he measured the living room, something didn't add up. The exterior measurements didn't match the interior by nearly 4 feet. It wasn't a rounding error. Somewhere in this house there was extra space. 2 nights later, he found it. The discovery came after too much coffee and too little sleep. He was knocking on walls, testing for hollowness, when his fist landed on something that felt wrong. A section of the wall between the living room and the kitchen sounded thinner, hollow. He fetched a crowbar. With each pull, plaster cracked and wood splintered. Dust choked the air. And then, behind the torn-away drywall, he saw it. A hallway. It that stretched into darkness impossibly long for the dimensions of his house. The ceiling was low, claustrophobic. Dim yellow bulbs flickered overhead, casting sickly light. At the end of the hallway stood a single closed door. Jacob swallowed. The air in there was cold. Not just cool, cold like an open freezer. None of this made sense. There was no record of any hidden rooms in the blueprints. The previous owner had never mentioned it. Slowly, Jacob stepped back. You would call a contractor, someone to explain this away. Rick Holman arrived the next morning. Grizzled guy, probably late 50s, his belt heavy with tools. He took one look at the hallway and frowned. This wasn't in the blueprints. Jacob shook his head. Rick exhaled. I'll check it out. Jacob nodded, relieved. Let someone else step inside first. Rick walked in. The floorboards creaked under his boots. The flickering lights buzzed overhead. The farther in he went, the smaller he seemed, swallowed by the dim yellow glow. Halfway down he called back, "Man, this thing is longer than your house should allow." Then he stopped. Jacob leaned forward. "Rick." Silence. Then a whisper. "Jesus Christ." And Rick was gone. Not gone in the sense that he ran. Not gone in the sense that he disappeared around a corner. No, he was just gone. 1 second he was there. The next, nothing but an empty hallway stretching into darkness. Jacob staggered back. His breath turned ragged. His hands shook. And the door at the end, it was slightly open now, just a crack. The police arrived an hour later. They searched the house, found nothing. No hallway, no hidden passage, no door, just a solid wall. Jacob stood in front of it, his mind struggling to keep up. He touched the wall where the entrance had been. It felt normal. Solid drywall, no seams. The cops exchanged looks. They asked about stress, about sleep deprivation. Jacob insisted it was real. They left, eventually, warned him to get some rest. That night, the knocking started. A soft rhythmic tap, tap, tap from inside the wall. Jacob sat up in bed, his pulse hammering. He listened. Then a voice, muffled, distant. Jacob, his blood ran cold. It came from the wall where the hallway had been. He threw off the covers, stood, moved toward the sound. The knocking stopped. A whisper replaced it, so close now that it felt like breath against his skin. "Found you." Jacob stumbled back, and then he saw the door. Not in the hallway, not in the wall. It was inside his bedroom, sitting there, closed, waiting. For the first hour, he sat in bed, staring at it. His hands gripped the sheets so hard his knuckles turned white. The door was just there. His bedroom should have had one door, but now there were two. Jacob's breath turned shallow. His stomach clenched. If he got up and touched it, would it still be real? Or would it vanish like the hallway had? The knocking returned, soft, patient. Jacob pressed his hands against his ears. Then the doorknob moved. A slow, deliberate turn. Jacob bolted. He lunged for the real door, his bedroom door, ripped it open and sprinted down the hallway. The front door, the outside. He needed to get out, but the hallway stretched. Longer. Too long. The front door was retreating. The walls closed in. The lights above flickered faster. His breath came in sharp gasps, and then the hallway was gone. He wasn't in his house anymore. He was inside the other hallway. The lights overhead barely flickered now. The air was colder. The wooden floor stretched impossibly far in both directions. Jacob turned, panicked. The door he had fled from was now behind him. He wasn't running away from it. It had been pulling him in. And then, a whisper, right against his ear. "Welcome home." The last thing Jacob saw was the door at the end of the hallway. It was wide open, and something was waiting for him inside. The house sat empty for months. Eventually the listing went back up. Fixer-upper, great bones. It would wait. It always did. And that's the end. But the night is far from over. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more. Tell me, are you still awake? Or did the whispers follow you into your dreams? If sleep won't come just yet, there are plenty more stories waiting for you. Go on, pick another. I'll be here.